To order. Today we continue our posture hearings with Indo-PACOM and U.S. Forces Korea. I want to thank our witnesses for being here and for their service to our nation and the time it took for them to prepare for this hearing. These are very helpful, and I appreciate your commitment. Last week, China carried out large-scale military exercises off Taiwan's coast. China practiced assaulting maritime and ground targets and cutting Taiwan off from the world. This is not new. In recent years, China has increased the size, scope, and complexity of its drills around Taiwan. As Admiral Paparo has said, these are not exercises. These are rehearsals for a forced reunification. And these rehearsals are backed by real capability. China now has the world's largest Navy and a shipbuilding capacity over 200 times greater than our own. It's rapidly expanding its nuclear arsenal and is expected to double its warheads by 2030. And China leads the world in hypersonic missile systems. China's growing defense budget shows it isn't slowing down. Last month, it announced a 7.2% increase in defense spending, the fourth straight year it increased by more than 7%. Its military modernization is also being assisted by Moscow. In return for supporting Putin's war machine, China is receiving advanced submarine, missile, and nuclear technology. China is also working closely with Iran and North Korea to further its effort to undermine American influence and alliances around the world, and we cannot let them succeed. Yet, year after year, the billions in Indo-PACOM's unfunded priorities have shown we're not giving our warfighters the tools they need to defeat China or to deter China. That must change. China is our pacing threat, and our defense investments must reflect that. We must fund Guam missile defense as part of President Trump's Golden Dome initiative. We must boost our defense, our ability to blind Chinese forces while hardening our command and control. We must refill our munition stockpiles, especially long-range fires. We must expand the production of attritable unmanned systems to create the hellscape Admiral Paparo envisions. And we must rebuild and modernize the U.S. shipbuilding capabilities. Delivering these capabilities will take serious investment. That's why I'm pushing for an increased spending in our military, including through the reconciliation process with robust defense spending. Ultimately, deterring China, ultimately deterring China is not something we should do alone. As Secretary Hegseth has said during his recent trip to the region, America first does not mean America alone. And he's right. That's why I supported the upgrade of the U.S. Forces Japan to a joint force headquarters. It will strengthen our combined deterrence and response capabilities with Japan. We must also accelerate AUKUS, especially efforts to field cutting-edge interoperable systems. And we need more co-production, co-development, and co-sustainment with our regional allies and partners. We must also deliver weapons and training to Taiwan faster. That's why I strongly supported the Taiwan Security Cooperation Initiative in last year's NDAA. And I intend to authorize it at a robust level again this year. We know Z instructed the PLA to be ready for operations against Taiwan by 2027. However, I don't believe he has yet decided whether to pursue unification by force. Our job is to make sure Z knows a cross-strait invasion would be too costly and ultimately futile. While China is our primary strategic adversary, North Korea remains a growing threat. In October 2024, Kim tested a new ICBM that could strike the U.S. homeland while carrying multiple nuclear warheads. I'm concerned these advances will accelerate as Kim strengthens his ties with Vladimir Putin, especially given North Korea supplied Russia with millions of shells and thousands of troops. Putin owes him. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses on how we can establish or reestablish deterrence against these threats posed by China and North Korea and what they need from us and this committee to do that. With that, I yield to my friend, the ranking member, for any opening statement he may have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I welcome our witnesses and appreciate their service and their leadership in a very, very complicated part of the world. And I agree with the chairman that the primary goal for us in that part of the world is to deter conflict. Certainly deterring conflict with China. North Korea presents challenges in that regard as well. And it is problematic because China is in the midst of a massive military buildup, and we see increasing cooperation, as the chairman outlined, between China, North Korea, Russia, Iran, and all of our adversaries in a way that will really stress our ability to deter that conflict. So it's most important to hear from the witnesses, what do we need from an equipment standpoint in order to be in the best possible position to deter our adversaries? Now, there is one challenge here, and that is that we have a, $36 trillion debt, massive deficit. So the thing I'm always anxious to hear from is what choices are we going to make? Because as we sit before this committee, every single group that comes before us tells us that they need a lot more than what they have. We don't have the money or the resources to meet all of those demands across every sphere of our national security needs. So we need to start making choices and looking for ways to effectively deter in a more cost-effective manner. We can't imagine that we can just throw money at the problem. We have to be really smart about what's going to work. So I'm very curious to hear from our witnesses what lessons they have learned from conflicts elsewhere in the world about what we truly need to be deterrent, and where we might be able to do that in a more affordable way. Not less effective, but more affordable. We've got the great example of Ukraine, who doesn't even have a Navy that has been able to blunt the force of the Russian Navy in the Black Sea with basically one-way attack surface-level drones. They've been able to really leverage that to get a good military outcome. We need to be smart about how we do that going forward. So that's going to be a key part of getting us to deterrence. But ultimately, I think we need to be mindful of the fact that one goal here needs to be to figure out how we can peacefully coexist with China. China's not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere. There's no sort of win in the sense that one side is going to ultimately defeat the other. China is a major economic power. They are a major military power, and so are we. So what is the plan to peacefully coexist with China? How do we get there? Admitting that deterrence has to be part of that. We have to be strong to get to that point. But constant conflict with China does not seem like a wise course of action if we ultimately want to deter conflict. And then the last part of this, the chairman mentioned the importance of partners and allies, and Secretary Hegseth's comment about America first doesn't mean America alone. Right now, yes, it does. All right. I cannot see a single solitary thing that the Trump administration has done to build and strengthen relationships with any partner in the world except maybe Russia. It's about the only place I can see where the president has said things about how he wants to get along with Russia. We have launched a trade war against every single one of our partners in the Asia region. Every last one of them. No matter how much they've worked with us, frankly, even in the case of Australia, where Australia, we have a trade surplus with Australia, but we're going to shoot at them too. How on earth is that not America alone? And our partnerships have been really important, and I want to thank our witnesses and others. In the last 5 or 6 years, we've built very strong relationships with Japan, with South Korea, with the Philippines. We're building stronger relationships with India and Indonesia. Australia has been a tremendous partner, and this has been the greatest thing that has really frustrated China. They are now surrounded by a group of nations who don't want to be bullied by China, so they're looking to us for support, and that has worked very well. And now we are trying to out-bully China. That seems to be the strategy. We're going to show Australia and Japan and all these countries that we can punch them just as hard as China can punch them. I am deeply concerned that that is going to undermine our ability to deter the region towards no particular end. So I really hope, I'll close with 2 things. One, let's push back on this. Let's build partnerships. And then also back to the budget point, I knew I was forgetting something. You can't cut taxes by $6 trillion and claim that you want to spend more money on defense. It just, well, unless you think that the debt and deficits don't matter, and I thought that was an argument for the far left, not for the far right. So we have to be realistic about the choices we face if we are going to meet the very important deterrence goals that we have in the Indo-Pacific region. Thank you. I yield back.
And I thank the ranking member. And now I'd like to introduce our witnesses. We have Mr. John Noe, who is performing the duties of Assistant Secretary of Defense for Indo-Pacific Security Affairs. Admiral Paparo, who is the commander of U.S. Indo-Pacific Command. And General Brunson, who is the commander of United Nations Command, Combined Forces Command, and the United States Forces Korea. With that, Mr. Noe, we'll start with you. You're recognized for 5 minutes to summarize your opening statement.
Chairman Rogers, Ranking Member Smith, and distinguished members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today to discuss our military posture and the national security challenges in the Indo-Pacific. And it is a distinct honor to speak with you alongside Admiral Paparo and General Brunson. Let me begin by reaffirming our mission as laid out by the Commander-in-Chief, President Donald Trump. We will achieve peace through strength. And Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth has provided us very clear guidance on how the department will achieve that mission. Revive the warrior ethos, rebuild our military, and reestablish deterrence. China's undertaking an unprecedented military buildup. The PLA is developing a large and advanced arsenal of nuclear, conventional, cyber, and space capabilities. Xi Jinping has ordered the PLA to be ready to invade Taiwan by 2027. China aims to dominate the Indo-Pacific and displace the United States as the world's most powerful nation. To counter the growing threat from China, it is critical that we reestablish deterrence in the Indo-Pacific, resorts with combat credible military forces postured forward, while rebalancing burden sharing with our allies and partners and investing in our defense industrial base to support our warfighters. The bottom line is that we need to accelerate efforts to strengthen our force posture and increase operational capabilities in the Indo-Pacific, given China's historic and rapid military buildup and the urgent need to reestablish deterrence. And we will pursue an America First approach, but America First does not mean America alone or America only. It means that America is supported by and standing with capable, like-minded allies and partners who will do their part to restore and sustain deterrence. Stronger allies lead to stronger alliances, and stronger alliances deter aggression and create dilemmas for our adversaries. And this is what this department and the team seated here before you today are delivering. In closing, thank you for your support and leadership and for the opportunity to testify before you today. And I greatly appreciate your continued commitment to and support for the men and women of the Department of Defense. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Noe. Admiral Paparo, you're recognized.
Chairman, Ranking Member, and distinguished members of the committee, thanks so much for the chance to appear before the committee to discuss the Indo-Pacific region. First, with me over my right shoulder is United States Indo-Pacific Command's senior enlisted leader, Fleet Master Chief Dave Isom, who is retiring after 38 years of selfless service as a Navy SEAL and special operator. Indispensable to any commander, this senior enlisted leader is in charge of key duties involving a region that spans over 50% of the globe, 4 of the 5 of the world's major threats, and much of the world's economic activity. Roughly 50% of the U.S. military's operational forces falls under his charge. And as all know, the Non-Commissioned Officer Corps is one of the Joint Forces' absolute asymmetric advantages. Fleet Master Chief Isom's leadership in this critical duty has been exemplary. I honor his service. He has been indispensable to me in making the transition as the commander for the last year. And this summer, having bid farewell to Master Chief Isom, we'll welcome Marine Sergeant Major Eric Cook to this post. Indo-PACOM faces a confluence of challenges. Foremost among them is China's increasingly aggressive and assertive behavior. Their unprecedented military modernization, encompassing advancements in artificial intelligence, hypersonics, space-based capabilities, among others, poses a real and serious threat to our homeland, to our allies, and to our partners. In 2024, the People's Liberation Army demonstrated growing capabilities through persistent pressure operations against Taiwan, escalating by 300%. China's aggressive military actions near Taiwan are, as the chairman said, not just exercises, they are rehearsals. And while the PLA attempts to intimidate the people of Taiwan and demonstrate coercive capability, these actions backfire, drawing increased global attention and accelerating Taiwan's own defensive preparations. North Korea's development of advanced nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles, including a new intercontinental ballistic missile capable of reaching the United States, poses a direct threat to our homeland and to our allies. Further, as discussed, North Korea is deepening its relationship with Russia, receiving military support and assistance to advance its own military capabilities. Russia's growing military cooperation with China adds another layer of complexity, creating a compounding challenge with the deepening cooperation between China, Russia, and North Korea. U.S. Indo-PACOM deters threats to the regional stability in competition and in crisis, while ensuring the ability to prevail in conflict. That ability to prevail is indispensable to deterrence. In 2024, the command conducted 120 joint exercises, among them 20 major joint exercises across the region, including allies and partners, demonstrating our capability and our combined capacity. We continue to strengthen relationships with Japan, South Korea, Australia, Republic of the Philippines, India, Taiwan, the ASEAN nations, the Pacific Island countries, and European partners in Indo-PACOM, including the United Kingdom and France. Multiple groupings, such as the Quad and trilateral arrangements, further enhance our capabilities. We must strive for dominance in space and across the information environment, including cyber, leveraging capabilities to counter command and control, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and targeting. This enables the command to gain a non-linear advantage over potential adversaries. And while the scale of our effort is substantial, the ability to master information is absolutely paramount to projecting power and safeguarding our interests. To maintain credible deterrence, U.S. Indo-PACOM requires sustained investment in counter C5 ISR and T, in fires, in integrated air and missile defense, in force sustainment, and as discussed, in autonomous and artificial intelligence-driven system, and all under greater ability to maintain domain awareness. As the most consequential opponent, China poses real and serious challenges to our military superiority, but this also presents opportunities for reform and for establishing enduring advantage. While Indo-PACOM faces significant challenges, I do remain confident in our deterrence posture and the ability to defend U.S. interests and maintain regional stability, but the trajectory must change. China is outproducing the United States in air, maritime, missile capability, and accelerating their space and counterspace capabilities. Though we face serious challenges, the joint force remains confident, resolute, and determined to prevail. Deterrence remains our highest duty. Thank you for your continued support for Indo-PACOM. Together, we advance the security, freedom, and prosperity of the American people and our allies and partners. I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral. General Brunson, you're recognized.
Chairman Rogers, Ranking Member Smith, and distinguished members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I'm honored to sit alongside Mr. No and Admiral Paparo here in the first of my posture hearings, the first of what I hope to be many more in the future. I would like to take a moment to thank you all for your continued and steadfast leadership and support to service members, the civilians that serve alongside us and their families. I'd also like to thank you especially for your continued assistance to those soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, and Guardians who are serving in Korea. I'd be remiss if I failed to recognize and give my condolences publicly to the family of a Republic of Korea Special Operations soldier who lost his life in a free fall parachute accident yesterday. It's a reminder that there is a high cost associated with wearing the cloth of our respective nations. In my career, every opportunity I've had to lead our nation's men and women has been an honor. And it's a privilege to serve alongside our allies, partners, and friends as we work together to further our shared interests, strengthen our ties, and further security, freedom, and prosperity in all our nations. The Korean Peninsula is directly linked to the national interest of the United States. What happens in this vital region has a direct impact on American families, businesses, and our nation's future. For over 75 years, we've invested our national treasure in the region. Northeast Asia is a region critical to U.S. national security and a region where recent authoritarian collusion between China, Russia, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, and Iran has intensified. It's a region of emergent challenges. However, there are also undeniable opportunities. Because our interconnected world grows closer and closer, any military actions that would occur on the Korean Peninsula would have worldwide and potentially global impacts. One of the things that we're looking at presently is an ability to continue to partner alongside others like those in UN Command, those 18 nations that make up that command, to continue to build partnerships which will strengthen not only our capacity in the region, but also be an indicator of our resolve therein. In 2024, DPRK focused on advancing their cruise missile and hypersonic glide vehicle research and development programs, launching some 47 ballistic missiles with one failed satellite launch attempt. Kim Jong-un also had 2 highly publicized visits to his nuclear sites, clearly conveying an intent to advance his nuclear weapons capabilities. Over the past year and a half, DPRK has exported munitions and troop support to Russia, demonstrating an ability to not only provide for another conflict, but to continue advancing their domestic capabilities. In the coming year, we expect DPRK to further develop hypersonic and multiple independently targetable reentry vehicle MIRV capabilities to complete his 8th Party Congress goals. At present, he's sitting at 5 of 7 obtained. Kim Jong-un's leadership has shifted from focus on reunification to declaring his own sovereignty. This change is evidenced by the hardening of the southern border, the rejection of reunification discussions, and the destruction of reunification monuments and buildings along the joint security area. DPRK continues to build its nuclear weapons program and boasts a Russian equipment-augmented, modernized military force of over 1.3 million personnel. To contrast that, I would like to mention the ROC U.S.-Japan alliance. Our trilateral efforts, along with those other nations within the United Nations Command, have woven together an integrated regional defense posture. Together, we've achieved new levels of interoperability and theater-wide combined joint all-domain exercises and training. Our presence in Korea demonstrates American strength. It imposes cost and deters military aggression by our adversaries. The ROC U.S. alliance remains the linchpin of security in Northeast Asia. I'm committed to working with you to ensure the continued security, freedom, and prosperity of the Korean Peninsula and a free and open Indo-Pacific. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General Brunson. I recognize myself first for questions. Admiral Paparo, how does the growing cooperation between China, Russia, and North Korea present challenges in your area of operations?
Chairman, each country compensates for the other's weaknesses. In this case, it's quite transactional, and there's a matter of symbiosis among it. So, for example, China has provided 70% of the machine tools and 90% of the semiconductors that support Russia's rebuilding its war machine. North Korea provides, as discussed, thousands of rounds in support and troops. And coming back to China and to North Korea are key capabilities where they would otherwise be behind that would help close the gap: submarine technology, missile technology, and surface-to-air missiles, and so forth. This is a transactional symbiosis that poses a serious challenge.
Great. General Brunson, what does the U.S. gain from from our presence on the Korean Peninsula? And if in fact your tri-command of U.S., South Korea, and UN forces didn't exist, what would it cost us to reestablish that kind of foothold on the Asian continent?
Chairman, as you know, that'll be surely a matter of policy, but from my perspective, what I see is that we've got positional advantage currently. We've had experience. You asked us in your opening to sort of highlight these things in regard to our experiences, and I can say that honestly, having been a Special Operations Joint Task Force commander in Iraq 1 year, I found myself on a FOB that I had been on as a battalion commander 6 years before. And we don't want that same condition. I think what we have to recognize is that the way that we are organized, the way that we posture ourselves in the region, we ought not seek credit for it, but we ought to at least acknowledge the fact that we're in all the places that we need to be. Capacities aside, the capabilities that are resident within the KTO presently are right where they need to be, my military assessment. I think that decisions will be made in the future, but just getting back in there and what we might be able to provide, again, in terms of protection and sustainment, which we're able to do across the globe, I think is critically important.
Great. Admiral Paparo, how can the U.S. accelerate the delivery of U.S. weapons to improve Taiwan's self-defense? How will the Taiwan Security Cooperation Initiative authorized by the FY25 NDAA help us deliver these needed capabilities to Taiwan?
Chairman, key is to eliminate, remove bureaucratic, in some cases, bureaucratic limitations in order to do so. Liberalizing the supply bases, certifying supply bases, a steady flow of funds in order to fund those capabilities and downstream long lead item matters would greatly enhance our ability to produce at speed.
And do you think that would have a deterrent effect on China's perceived opportunities?
Sir, I think it gains 3 to 5 to 1 leverage for every capability that we provide in defense.
Great, thank you. With that, I yield to the ranking member for his questions.
Thank you. Sort of building on that last question, Admiral Paparo and General Brunson, if you had that, as I mentioned in my opening statement, what capabilities, just focusing for the moment on what the U.S. could do you most need? Do you think would be have the most deterrent effect? I know, obviously, everyone wants more ships, more planes, more everything. But if you could, narrow it down to here are some of the most crucial things that could help you, just again, focusing on U.S. needs, give us an answer on that.
Ranking Member, the most critical need to focus on is our counter C5ISR&T capability, which gives us freedom to maneuver, freedom to operate at lower risk throughout the area of responsibility.
Secure communications, basically.
The ability to dazzle, deceive, destroy, the adversary's ability to see and sense, and then hardening our own ability to give a high fidelity common operating picture to units to unlock their ability.
Yeah. Any piece of that in particular where you see the greatest need right now, understanding that I'll ask you this in the classified session as well and get into more detail. Posture hearings are different this year. We haven't got the budget yet. So it's a little weird. But as we lead up to the budget, hopefully will come in about a month, what would be most important to be in there to meet that need?
Leveraging the United States' ability, having 90% of the space lift in the world to bring counter space capability, and then to continue to enhance our cyber capability. And many others in the form of long-range weapons, in the form of unmanned and AI systems that affect air denial and sea denial in enclosed places, such as the Taiwan Strait, augment these.
Yeah. I'm just going to ask this. So General Hawk got fired. He's the head of NSA Cyber. How has that impacted your ability to work with NSA and Cyber on those very critical issues that you just outlined?
I say we're ready to work with whatever competent individual is in place, and we'll continue to try to enhance that ability.
Did you think General Hawk was a competent individual who you could work with?
Yes.
General Brunson, on the first question about capabilities, what would you most need in your command?
Sir, as I had the opportunity to mention yesterday in the HAC-D closed session, all my requests are inhabited within the IPL of Indo-PACOM. I would tell you that as I look at the more ephemeral domains of cyber, EW, and space, I'm looking to be engaged in those in a more fulsome manner. And I think that that's where we can talk in close about some of those particular capabilities that we need to bring to bear on the peninsula. But to an earlier question that you mentioned, Ranking Member, I'd like to say that, if we were trying to project strength, one of the things that we're continuing to work on right now is the assailable flank that is United Nations Command. There are 18 total nations there, and so I see the KTO as being a bit wider, and being able to leverage those other nations in the Republic of Korea and beyond is a way for us to continue to sort of underpin the things that we're doing on the peninsula with legitimacy.
I'm running out of That's really important. I want to get to that, but I want to ask Mr. Note those questions. So as I mentioned in my opening statement, we are alienating every single partner in the region. And you made the statement, America first doesn't mean America alone. I'm puzzled. What are we doing to enhance relationships? I think we've all seen on display what we're doing to sort of make those relationships more problematic. But what is the administration doing to try to strengthen partnerships when they're launching a trade war against all of our partners?
Ranking Member Smith, so as you know, Secretary Hegseth just came back from his first trip to the Indo-Pacific, where he visited both the Philippines and Japan. He had a chance to reaffirm our commitment to those important alliances with—
What is that commitment? I mean, we can all go on vacation to Japan and say how much we love the country, but what is that commitment? Because there doesn't seem to be any commitment other than threats and bullying.
It's reaffirming our commitment, our treaty obligations to both the Philippines and Japan. He announced a number of things that the department is currently doing to work with both the Philippines and Japan to accelerate and strengthen our relationships. In the Philippines, for example, he made an announcement about bilateral Special Operations Forces training that we're conducting.
Just one last question. How much damage do you think the trade war that has just been launched does to all of what you just said?
Ranking Member Smith, in all the engagements and the personal engagements I've had, in all the engagements that I've seen the Secretary has had, our relationships with our allies and partners in the region are strong and remain strong.
This only started a couple days ago, so we'll see where it goes. I yield back. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, the Ranking Member. Chair, I recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Whitman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank our witnesses for joining us. Thanks again for the incredible job that you all are doing. Admiral Paparo, I want to begin with you. You talked about the importance of shipbuilding, but very specifically shipbuilding in certain areas. We have a distinct asymmetric advantage under the sea. Can you give us a perspective about what that looks like in relation to what we have as that advantage versus what the Chinese have, what they're building in relation to what we have? Secondly, too, is that we know that the Marine Corps is going to be the stand-in force there in the Indo-Pacific. They're going to be the tip of the spear, have that ability to make sure that they're the crisis response team. The challenge for us today is we don't have enough amphibious ships, and the ones that we do have an operational availability of 41%. So when your call goes out, the challenge is can it be met? Because today we cannot put together an amphibious ready group Marine Corps Expeditionary Unit, better known as an ARGMU. Can't do it. We can put a single ship out there, but we can't put the complement of ships that we need for an ARGMU. Can you tell me where are we in relation to the need for getting to that 2.33 submarines a year for AUKUS and ourselves, why that's important? And then what do you see as your alternative in a crisis response if when you call for an ARGMU, there's not one to be had?
Thank you, sir. Great to see you again. Presently, we have a generational advantage from a submarine standpoint against our adversaries. And this is key, critical, and indispensable to the ability to prevail. The PRC, though not perfectly linear, but the PRC is outproducing the United States by a rate of 2.0 per year to 1.28 presently attack submarines per year. Required to get there are continued investments in defense industrial base, liberalizing the long lead time supply chains, and giving a steady flow of funding. On the Marine stand-in forces and on amphibious ships are absolutely critical to this effort. and we are not meeting mission globally on doing so. It's a matter of the maintenance of the current capability that we have, and frankly, it's also a matter of the number of amphibious ships that we have. So the ops analysis does not lie on that matter.
Very good. Thank you. Let me then move from that. You talk about the need for us to get above the 1.28 production. That's not only to meet our requirements, but also to fulfill the obligations we made under AUKUS to make sure we have that partnership. Partnerships are incredibly important in that region. We talk about AUKUS, but we also talk about the Quad agreement. Can you give us your sense about, are there any barriers that are standing in the way for us to fully operationalize AUKUS, whether it's Pillar 1 or Pillar 2, and all the opportunities that are there for us with the Quad? We see what our adversaries are doing and trying to create more relationships there. We have to do more at the pace of relevance to make sure we have substantive outcomes of these agreements. Can you give us a perspective about where you see things and what we need to do to accelerate that?
AUKUS Pillar 1, operationally, we are meeting every milestone. The biggest risk driver to AUKUS Pillar 1 is getting to that production rate by the time that Australia purchases its own Virginia-class submarine. That is the greatest barrier that I see right now, presently. On Pillar 2, the other capabilities, missiles and unmanned and cyber. On this case, the biggest barrier are barriers to our administrative and bureaucratic barriers to co-production. Co-production among our partners, not just our AUKUS partners, but all of our partners, would greatly enhance our missile magazines for all of us.
Mm-hmm. Would you say that ITAR currently has been modified enough to open the door for Pillar 2? Because I know as we talk to the Australians, they are not very happy with still the impediments with ITAR.
I would agree with them.
Okay, very good. Let me ask, are there other ways that we can get the most out of technological cooperation with our friends, not just there with AUKUS, but also with the Quad, where there's great opportunities with India and more opportunities with Japan? Give us your perspective on that.
Yes, that multilateral, India, Japan, the United States, and Australia, that is critical, and it's growing. Mm-hmm. And we've seen some progress also with co-production among us, and we see some progress on exercises. But again, our limits to co-production and speeding up our ability to release key technologies to our partners under conditions of trust and under the scrutiny of trust that leads us to do so with confidence will enhance that effort.
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Connecticut, Mr. Courtney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the witnesses for your testimony this morning. Again, at the outset, I just would note on Saturday, the 24th Virginia-class submarine was commissioned into the Navy. There are 4 more that are coming online between now and the end of 2026. So, there's no question that the cadence is not where it should be, but if you look at tonnage, and again, if you look at the fact that post-COVID, the yards are recovering. We just had the new Secretary of the Navy at Quonset Point on Friday, who, again, got an eyeful in terms of just the chock-a-block activity that's going on there. So just to go back to AUKUS for a second, Admiral, this committee in record time enacted all the authorities in 2023 per optimal pathway to get, again, that engaged. There still is, in my opinion, a misperception that AUKUS is primarily about just helping Australia. Can you talk a little bit about what it means in terms of the U.S. as far as making our nation safer and also the Indo-Pacific safer?
Yes, AUKUS delivers something to Indo-PACOM that is critical and could be a key advantage, and that is an Indian Ocean submarine base. This gives us faster response time to the South China Sea than in Hawaii, in Washington, in San Diego. It gives us the key ability to maneuver into the Indian Ocean without the burden of having to go through straits. And so it is key. And then Australia is making key investments in the submarine industrial base. As I utter these words, there are 11 Australians stationed on attack boats in Hawaii, and scores that are working in the Pearl Harbor shipyard. These are just but a few of their contributions.
And again, the plan is also to have the rotation of Virginias starting in 2027, I believe, in Henderson in Western Australia, which again, they are making huge investments in terms of the infrastructure that's necessary for that effort. You know, one of the authorities, Mr. No, that we enacted vis-a-vis AUKUS was we had actually passed a law to allow Australia to invest $3 billion into our industrial base. It was such a novel, extraordinary component of the optimal pathway that we actually, as I said, had to change the Treasury Department's rules to accept that money. As you, I think, should know, the defense minister from Australia, in his visit with Mr. Hegseth, brought the first check for $500 million, which was deposited in the U.S. Treasury. And to follow up Mr. Smith's question regarding you know, the trade war that's happening right now, Australia has a free trade agreement with the U.S. There are 0 tariffs on U.S. goods that come into Australia. As Adam said, there's a 2-to-1 trade surplus from the U.S. into Australia. They're putting money into our industrial base, and yet we are tariffing Australia at the same level as the country of Iran. And I will tell you that, you know, maybe you've had sort of conversations where this hasn't come up. That's not the case for some of us who, you know, are in touch with members of parliament in Australia. There is definitely collateral damage to our allies in terms of what's happening out there. And the picture that was in the news the other day of representatives from the South Korean government and Japan shaking hands with China to announce a new anti-tariff effort by those countries. I mean, we are just pushing people in the wrong direction in this part of the world. And we need more from you in terms of just what is the department's position in terms of advising the White House about the fact that this is driving our allies in the wrong direction.
Congressman, on the issue of tariffs, I mean, that's an issue that's beyond the purview of my personal position to comment on. It's not something the Department of Defense focuses on, but you mentioned the $500 million contribution that Australia made. I was there when Secretary Hegseth met with Deputy Prime Minister Marles. We were grateful, and we are grateful for the contribution Australia is making. That's part of a larger $3 billion investment into our submarine industrial base. Secretary Hegseth said at that meeting, there's more that needs to be done to increase our...
I have just a few seconds left. I mean, this is an all-of-government situation, and you cannot stovepipe the Department of Defense in terms of just what's happening with other parts of the administration. And this trade war, as I said, is driving our allies in the wrong direction, and we need to stop it. I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I want to thank each of you for your service. It's humbling to be in your presence, and what a difference you make, and how important it is where we are today, sadly in a conflict we did not choose, and that is dictators with rule of gun invading democracies with rule of law, and what we can do to deter, and that's your field. And we saw, sadly, dictator war criminal Putin to invade Ukraine on February 24, 2022, under the theory that Ukraine doesn't exist. Then we know that the puppets of Iran invaded Israel on October 7, 2023, under the theory that Israel doesn't exist from the river to the sea. But it's just so important that we be as strong as we can for peace through strength to deter the Chinese Communist Party that claims, of course, Taiwan does not exist. There's a parallel there, and it's before us. And so what you're doing is just so important. And with that in mind, I want to thank all of you for your service. And I had the opportunity last year to have my third visit in the Republic of Korea to visit at Camp Humphreys. What a world-class facility that is. I was there when the groundbreaking occurred, and then to go back and see this facility of $10.8 billion investment, 90% paid for by the very appreciative people of the Republic of Korea. And the American people need to know that nearly almost $10 billion was spent by the people of Korea to appreciate having an American presence there which is a deterrence to the maniac that's in charge of Pyongyang. Keeping that in mind, I visited with troops from South Carolina, and it's just so important that we remain ironclad in supporting the people of Korea with the instability of indeed the regime in Pyongyang. And we have 28,000 troops in Korea, and the message of that is to protect Korea, of course, but Japan, all of our interests in the Pacific, which are so critical. And with that, indeed, General Brunson, I'm very grateful myself that I'm the only member of Congress who's actually been to Pyongyang. I was on a delegation in 2003. And so I saw, again, firsthand, the oppression of the people of North Korea and how sad that is. But Kim Jong-un has laid out a plan to advance missile technology of North Korea, and he's proceeding with this year 8 ballistic missiles that are being developed that possibly could reach the United States. With that in mind, and we also know the increasing relationship between North Korea and war criminal Putin, with North Korea sending troops to kill Ukrainians with the technology that indeed war criminal Putin is providing to North Korea for ultimately the ability to attack the United States. With this in mind and the strengthening ties with war criminal Putin and the Chinese Communist Party, General, what actions can we take to minimize the risk?
Congressman, thank you for the question. As a son of a Sergeant Major retired from Manning, South Carolina, I appreciate this question today. The first thing I'd like to say is that the Korean people are incredibly resilient, as noted in the constitutional crisis that was occurring recently, now resolved. Expect a new presidential election on the 3rd of June. They also provide for us, as you mentioned, an environment wherein we can build readiness across the joint force. And I've seen that in the short 90 days that I've been in command, whether it be Marines coming or a carrier strike group coming to the peninsula. And so those things are absolutely sound. And I thank the Korean people for what they provide for us. As Admiral Paparo mentioned, the things are going there. We can see it very well. We can see, we can sense, we can understand, we can track, we can even target things that are going. We do not, however, but we can see that. What's most important, as Admiral Paparo said, is what's coming back. The technological development that they're able to almost cut in half in terms of developing the ballistic missile technology, to develop air vehicles for their missiles, all those things that they're getting back in terms of the ability to jam in the West Sea, which has now made that a contested area. I think that's what we keep our eyes on, and we deter that by continuing to bring those strategic assets to bear in the KTO.
And I'm grateful to see a son of Clarendon County do well. And Admiral, just a point, I appreciate Donald Trump naming the Indo-PACOM, and I appreciate every effort made to work with our defense allies of India, what a great ally they can be, and particularly with the development of an industrial base of their own, not to be depending on war criminal Putin for inferior
Gentleman's time's
equipment.
expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your opening remarks, as well as Ranking Member Smith, about this set of issues. I'm going to very quickly, Mr. Knoll, your response to my colleague, Courtney, was totally inadequate. It was wrong. You've got to send back to the Secretary that the trade war significantly diminishes our power throughout the world. To do anything other than to send that message back is simply a dereliction of your duties as an acting Assistant Secretary. So be aware. Last night, it appears as though Trump's tariff war seems to be, at least in part, a gambit to open negotiations with individual countries. His message last night to the Republican conference was to open those negotiations with this message: kiss my ass. You might ask the Secretary, just how well will that work in maintaining good relationships that are absolutely essential in the Pacific? Don't expect a response, but I expect you to do your job. Send the message back that these negotiations, this trade war, is a very serious challenge toward the Indo-Pacific region and other parts of the world. Now, from my perspective, this administration's approach to addressing China is reckless and misusing our national instruments of power. So, Admiral Paparo, let's talk about the Pacific Islands. Are they important in your strategies in the Pacific?
Congressman, just as in the Second World War, the Pacific Island countries, Guadalcanal, throughout the Indo-Pacific to Bora Bora are important as well. And that's why the People's Republic of China has efforts of elite capture, of the attempted partnership with their security apparatuses. And so on history, on geography, and on interests, they're quite important.
Good. Are we missing the opportunities with the trashing of USAID and also not using the Coast Guard to full effect in the Pacific Islands?
The USAID aid is under review, and I'll be advocating most strongly for that aid for all of the countries. And the Coast Guard provides a critical role in the South Pacific, and that is counter lawfare, counter illicit trafficking, counter illegal, illicit, and unregulated fishing. And those are key advantages. The Coast Guard is uniquely capable of doing that, and they've done a wonderful job for us.
Are they available 365, 24/7?
Presently, they're on another task, and we're compensating for that with appropriate naval capabilities and air capabilities. But they are quite critical to that mission.
Okay. I'm told it costs about $140 million to have a Coast Guard cutter available, operating in the Pacific Islands. Is that an investment that you're willing to make from the Pacific Defense Initiative?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I appreciate the direct response. $140 million. There's also issues of basing relationships with various ports in the Pacific. Will you be using the Defense Initiative to enhance those facilities that are necessary for the Navy as well as for the Coast Guard?
Yes, sir. Those bases, places, the airfields, the ports, the piers are absolutely critical. They're key to our principles of expanded maneuver that enables us to put geography to work, to deter, and if necessary, to win.
Good. I don't think I'll go back to the fact that we are imposing tariffs on islands that do not have any exports to the United States, but that's another silly, sloppy piece of work that the administration is doing with regard to the tariff issue. I want to spend a few moments on logistics. The support of the Navy, some of this came up with the military ships, the amphibs. Could you talk to us about the necessity of TRANSCOM and non-kinetic ships providing support in the Pacific?
The combat logistics.
I think we're going to take that in writing. My time has expired.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank the gentleman. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Tennessee, Dr. Desjardins.
Thank you, Chairman. Admiral Paparo, good to see you. You noted that PLA activity around Taiwan jumped 300% last year, including what you described as dress rehearsals for potential invasion. What indicators are you watching most closely to assess whether those rehearsals are moving towards actual preparations for imminent conflict?
We watch the transloading of equipment, of personnel, of ordnance. We look deeper into some of the non-military instruments of national power for the People's Republic of China in order to gain back strategic and operational warning to give us early leverage to position a force to respond to conflict.
Okay. And you've spoken publicly about Hellscape plan to deter invasions through unmanned systems, and you were very generous with your time on Codell Kelly in February at your headquarters in laying that out in great detail. In open source, can you walk us through how this fits into your broader deterrence framework and how we're helping ensure Taiwan is investing in the right capabilities to make this concept viable?
Yes, sir. As discussed in the Black Sea, there are spaces where the force need not gain air superiority or maritime superiority, but just deny it to the other at low human cost. And this is the essence of Hellscape: undersea, unmanned undersea vehicles, unmanned surface vehicles, unmanned air systems, and loitering munitions. Summing those, operating them within one common command and control framework to be able to put them to that best use. And Taiwan, for that matter, is also making those investments, and those investments are and must be aligned to the investments that we're making.
Good. Thank you. And Admiral, last week the U.S. and Chinese military officials held their first working-level maritime security talks since the start of this administration. Can you update the committee on how these conversations went and how you see their value in the current environment?
Both sides were very direct. They were conducted professionally, and we lodged several inputs into the discussions about unsafe, unprofessional behavior, the deployment of flares in front of our partner nations' vehicles and I should say aircraft, dangerous maneuvers around ships. And it's an important dialogue that we had, and I feel confident that the People's Republic of China caught the message.
Okay. And you touched on this briefly with Mr. Whitman, but just a little deeper dive. We often hear that alliances are our asymmetric advantage, and I agree with that in principle. But how do we ensure that those relationships remain net contributors to deterrence rather than creating dependencies? And what have you already seen that you would like to see over the next year or two that would signal they are stepping up in the face of the PLA threat?
Greater investment in their own defense from a standpoint of percentage of their GDP, their gross domestic product, as an indicator. Acquiring the right systems that are interoperable among all of the partners. And of course, there's Australia's historic investment in AUKUS and the United Kingdom, I might also add. There's Japan's investment and a counter-strike capability with the acquisition of 400 Tomahawk land attack missiles. These are some of the examples of how this is operationalized.
Are there gaps that we still need to fill to close and make those efforts more strategically impactful?
There are always gaps because we're never satisfied with how ready we are. But yes, we have to speed up our ability to co-produce capabilities. We have to speed up the bureaucratic barriers to executing those faster, and we must reform the industrial base so that those capabilities deliver on time.
Thank you, sir. And with that, I'll yield back.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Moulton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Coe, you said in your testimony that stronger alliances is what this team is delivering. Are alliances with Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, Thailand, Vietnam, Australia, the Philippines, and India included in your stronger alliances? Are those important allies for us in the Indo-Pacific?
Congressman, absolutely.
So you're raising tariffs 24% on Japan, 25% on South Korea, 32% on Taiwan, 36% on Thailand, 46% on Vietnam, only 10% on Australia, 18% on the Philippines, and 26% on India. How do these tariffs strengthen our alliances?
Well, Congressman, as I said before, the issue of tariffs is beyond purview of my position.
Oh, so it doesn't matter? You don't think our allies care about tariffs? You seem to care about our allies and the relationship we have with them. You don't think tariffs have any influence on that?
Congressman, I've had multiple engagements, personal engagements with allies and partners.
Does weakening our allies' economies help our alliance?
All the engagements that I've had, that I've seen the Secretary have with his counterparts, lead me to believe that our alliances and partnerships are in a very
that they like the
strong
tariffs, that that's a good move. It strengthens our alliances. Is that what you're saying, Mr. Coe?
Our alliances and partnerships are in a very strong place.
These tariffs are also going to raise prices for American consumers, including American troops. Will this be good for your soldiers, General Brunson? Do they have a lot of extra disposable income to spend?
Congressman, in answer to the extra disposable income, I've got two college-age daughters that I'm still putting through college and a 15-year-old at home. I don't know that disposable income is what I would look at here.
Admiral Paparo, when the tariffs raise the prices that your sailors and Marines pay at the commissaries for groceries, the PX, whatever, is that good for your sailors and Marines? Higher prices?
Higher
Them and their families?
Higher prices will hurt our service members.
Mr. No, you mentioned that, I appreciate the direct answer, thank you. Mr. No, you mentioned that Secretary Hegseth recently traveled to the region to reaffirm our commitment to our allies. Is South Korea one of those important allies?
South Korea is a very important ally. In his call several weeks ago with the...
So I wonder if the reason why you have to reaffirm those alliances is because of this trade war the president has started. But regardless of that, can you explain how pulling out Patriot batteries from South Korea demonstrates that commitment?
Congressman, we face a very dangerous security environment. The department...
Yes, in the Indo-Pacific, which is your #1 priority. So why are you pulling Patriot batteries out of South Korea to send them to the Middle East? I thought that China was the pacing threat.
Well,
Disagree with that?
Congressman, the department will continue to address threats as...
General Brunson, is it helpful to you in South Korea and your alliance with the South Koreans to pull out a Patriot battery?
Congressman, if I could be given just a second to explain the way we handled that.
No, I don't want to know. I just want to know if it's helpful or not. I don't want an explanation. I just want an answer. And it would be helpful if you could give direct answers like Admiral Paparo. Admiral Paparo, back to you. I recently heard from a commanding officer under your command expressing frustration and disgust over Secretary Hegseth's illegal disclosure of top-secret targeting information detailing when American pilots would be over enemy territory on an unclassified platform that we know is targeted by our adversaries, including China. I've never heard from this commander about an issue like this before. He seemed concerned about the example that this sets for our troops. You have to make rapid operational decisions. Do you use signal chats to discuss operational plans and other classified information?
No, Congressman.
Do you allow sailors under your command to keep their jobs when they knowingly disclose classified information?
No, sir.
Do you criminally prosecute people under your command who knowingly, illegally disclose top secret information upon which the lives of our pilots depend?
We would if we encountered that.
Do you allow your sailors and Marines to drink on the job?
No, sir.
Admiral Paparo, I assume you expect accountability from your commander. Secretary Hegseth said accountability is back at DOD. When you instill accountability in your subordinates, do you advise them to lie about the disclosure of classified information?
No, sir, I expect integrity.
Mr. No, you talked about restoring the warrior ethos. Is part of the warrior ethos disclosing top secret information and then lying about doing so? Yes or no? Is that part of the warrior ethos? You were in the Army. Is that what the Army taught you?
Congressman,
Yes or no? Did the Army teach you that, Mr. No?
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Mississippi.
My guess is no.
Mr. Kelly.
It's unfortunate that this committee, which has always been bipartisan, this is a Ways and Means tariffs and those things, but I'm going to address some. Is being a weak and feckless leader, does that make you more respected by your allies and partners? And I don't expect an answer, but I can tell you we lived through 4 years of a weak and feckless and non-existent leader. And I'm trying to remember whether or not Russia invaded Ukraine under President Trump or whether he invaded under a weak and feckless Biden. I'm trying to remember over the last 4 years whether China has become more aggressive or less aggressive, and I know for a fact that they've become more aggressive because weakness invites bullies to attack. I'll talk about tariffs just a little bit. Is appeasement giving everyone everything that they want at your expense? That is not a partnership. That is not a partnership. I'm reminded in 2017 when President Trump said NATO needs to pay their 2% fair share. And I remember the same kind of reactions across the aisle. Oh my God, how dare we ask our allies? They're going to hate us. They're going to get away. But if you look back now, they have increased their ability to defend themselves and to help us defend them in NATO. I will tell you that tariffs being taken advantage of It's not how we become strong leaders in the community. Giving your kids everything they want is not good parenting. It is not about likability. It is about respect. And so with that said, Admiral Paparo, in the Indo-PACOM is arguably the most consequential theater of this century, specifically as it pertains to fuel, both in the air and on the sea. Are there gaps? Are there things that we can do as far as air and sea in fuel delivery?
Yes, sir. There are gaps in defense fueling support points. Those are those locations where aircraft and or ships would load fuel and distribute fuel. There are shortfalls in our tanker fleet in keeping enough fuel in the case of a contingency, and there are gaps in the combat logistics force in order to sustain the force. And I'd like to work with the committee to identify those gaps.
And Admiral Paparo, we've talked about USAID, but another strength that we have is our state partnership program, where our National Guards partner with allies and partners. In the Indo-Pacific, are there any of those that are valuable, or are there places where we need new ones?
Every one is highly valuable, sir, and indispensable to our capability. They build long-lasting relationships and the continuity of the training that we execute. I will tell you, there are no gaps partner to partner because of just because of the good faith of the state partners and the good faith of the National Guard Bureau that assigns those. But there's always room for improvement everywhere, because we can never be satisfied with good enough. We must also always strive for excellence.
And I want to address just a little bit, because I also sit on the House Select Committee on Intelligence, and the signal chat, while ill-advised, and I'll be the first to say that, there's no indication that any classified real-time information about strikes that are not specific in the location, that would not be top secret information, would it? If it doesn't disclose location, time, systems, that would not be top secret unless it disclosed beforehand sources or methods or direct specific things that could be used. Is that correct to Admiral Paparo and General Brunson?
Agreed, sir.
Yes, sir.
And Mr. No, you've had a lot of hard questions, and I hate to put y'all, listen, y'all are the Secretary, y'all work for the Department of Defense, not the Department of Commerce or for the Ways and Means Committee and tariffs. But I want to ask you, relationships, Mr. No, when we're looking for strength of partnerships and alliances, are we looking at someone who just takes everything we give them and gets mad when we want something back? Or are we looking for mutually beneficial relationships with nations where we both can be more successful?
Absolutely mutually beneficial relationships, Congressman.
And do you agree, under the Trump administration, the last time and this time also, that he is striving to build relationships that are duly help both sides, not just one side of the equation, their side?
Absolutely, Congressman.
Okay, with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Pennsylvania, Ms. Houlihan.
Thank you very much for the conversation. Admiral Paparo, I read that you went to Villanova University, which is just down the road from my district. And I want to, actually don't even need to probably draw your attention to the recent earthquake in Myanmar. As some of the conversation earlier in our hearing talked about USAID, and the earthquake in Myanmar has claimed at least 2,000 lives that we know of. And the U.S. was very noticeably absent in terms of our response from USAID. No USAID presence, no visible coordination or relief efforts, even as China and Russia, in fact, stepped in to rescue people, children, and elderly from collapsing buildings. Given that recent earthquake in Myanmar and the most likely fact that there will be other sorts of natural disasters such as these and some that are not natural, what should the DoD be doing? How does this impact our strategic posture in the Indo-Pacific region? Should the DoD have a posture in place in the absence of USAID to help provide resources in disasters such as these?
Congresswoman, thank you, and thank you for the recognition of our home state. Yes, we are postured in places, in certain locations with crisis response forces, and in partnership with USAID, there are key and critical stores that enable us to respond to these natural disasters. And the outcome of this is an enhanced ability to gain access, basing, and overflight in combat.
So I happen to have been flying through Hawaii on our way to Australia when the Maui fires happened, and the response was pretty forceful from our military because we were still waiting for FEMA to respond. This has to not be the most efficient way for our government to respond to natural disasters that happen for our own people and also for those around the world. There has to be a better way of doing that than to distract and deploy our military in those sorts of situations. Do you feel as though that might be the case?
As we do defense support to civil authorities stateside, and as we do humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, the military is frequently a key and critical partner to our other government agencies to deliver this at first. But then as the aid organizations step in, we execute a graceful transfer of those capabilities to get back on our primary mission of deterrence.
In many ways, I feel as though we're sort of inviting our adversaries into the region to take that place. Of course, the military will still be there. We still are America and we still care. But do you believe that we're also increasing the possibility of influence in the region from places like China?
The People's Republic of China sees these opportunities and they seize them.
My final, or my second to last question is for General Brunson. I'm going to quote an article from April 3rd from military.com titled, "Army Planners Are Weighing Force Reductions of Up to 90,000 Active Duty Soldiers." Are you aware of this article?
No, ma'am, I'm not.
I would love to introduce that, and if that's okay for the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
It says that the military Army planners are weighing reductions as a result of Secretary Hegseth's requirement to find 8% cuts. To your knowledge, the picture is actually of a live fire exercise in Indonesia, so it's specific to the conversation that we're having today. You're not aware of any conversations of any reduction in force of 90,000 Army soldiers?
No, ma'am, I'm not.
I would love it if I might be able to follow up with you all and understand if there's any truth to this article, because it is sort of alarming to me. With what remains of my time, Mr. No, I want to talk to you as well. Many of my colleagues have spoken to you about trade tariffs, and yesterday we had a very similar conversation with your colleague who had a similar position in Europe. And I really was frustrated with her answers, and I'm also frustrated with yours that there is not a whole of government understanding of the implications of tariff being levied on our allies in the region and other nations in the region too. Is it really your position that this is not something that's yours to opine on or to talk about?
Congresswoman, yes, tariffs is simply beyond purview of my position to.
But my understanding is that at the end of March, South Korea, China, and Japan held an economic dialogue that they agreed that they would work together now as a result of what the United States is levying upon them. Are you aware of that?
Gentlelady's time's expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman
Thank
from
you.
Nebraska, Mr. Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate all three of you being here. And we got our hands full at the United States. We got China's the pacing threat, the long-term threat. They want to be the regional hegemon now, and they want to be the world superpower in the decades to come. But I would also submit that Russia is the near-term threat by its behavior, with Ukraine severing cables, shooting down airliners. And then we also have Iran, the world's largest exporter of terror. And we have to deal with all three of these, which means we have to have the capabilities, but we also have to have close allies. I appreciate the job our two four-star generals are doing in the Pacific. I'm grateful to you. My first question is to Admiral Paparo. I was a 30-year electronic warfare guy in the Air Force. I think we were dominant in the 1990s. We let it atrophy. Could you talk about the importance of EW in your theater, but also the Air Force has funded 10 EA-37s, Compass Call aircraft, which I used to fly the earlier version. I don't think that's adequate for your needs. So if you could talk about the importance of electronic warfare and the EA-37.
Thank you, Congressman. Yes, as discussed, our highest priority is counter command control communications, intelligence, surveillance, response, and targeting. And electronic means whether that's through internet protocol, that's through radio communications, is the absolute linchpin. And to be able to target that non-kinetically is absolutely critical. And I couldn't agree more with our need to strive even harder to gain and to maintain dominance in those critical spectra.
Is 10 EA-37s adequate?
I'll have to get back to you on that, but you're talking to somebody that's never satisfied with where we are.
Well, I had some access to studies that I think PACOM needs 21, so I'd like to make sure we can fund more Compass Call aircraft so you have those capabilities. I was going to talk to you about attack submarines, but you've already done that, so let me pivot to the Ohio-class SSGNs. So they're aging out. They're going to be deactivated at 600 Tomahawks. When I visited with you in February, you were also pointing out some of the cruisers that were going to be deactivated. So can you talk about the gap that we're starting to build here and the impacts of losing these submarines and cruisers?
Yes, sir. Having quantity of vessels that can impose costs. I'm probably quoting the wrong guy, but quantity has a quality all its own. And so to the extent that our capability decreases, that's bad for us.
General Brunson, a question for you. Can you talk a little about why is North Korea sending thousands of troops to Russia, and how do you think they're benefiting from this?
Yes, Congressman. So one of the reasons is it helps them to circumvent the normal course of business and sanctions that exist on them presently. It allows them to get around some of that because there is material that's coming back to the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. They're also able to get a technological boost, if you will, on things that they are seeking to develop. It's cutting their development time in half. They're also receiving some material that we can talk about in the closed session that is causing us some problems in the operating environment currently.
I'll come back to the attack submarines since it was already touched on. We've been producing about one a year right now. What's your take on that, Admiral Paparo?
It's inadequate, and we've got to work harder in order to do that. And it's a combination of a steady stream of funding. It's a combination of liberalizing the defense industrial base, reforming the industrial base, and so we have to work harder. We have to get to 2.3, 2.4, 2.5 per year, and we can't rest until we do so.
Thank you very much. I appreciate all three of you. And I would just close by saying, we're leader of the free world, and we can only produce one attack submarine. We got to do better. I yield.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from New York, Mr. Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for being here. Appreciate you making a long trip, especially for two of the three of you. Admiral Paparo, thank you for hosting myself and others out in February, along with my colleague, Mr. Bacon. I think it's important to say in front of the American people and the whole committee, I left with an incredibly optimistic and frankly very proud view of your leadership, all the subordinate component commands, all aligned, clear-eyed about the threat, clear-eyed about the urgency of the moment, and I commend you on that. And I also commend you on, always coming to us and letting us know in a productive way what we can be doing to enable and continue to up that. I want to share something specifically that you said at the Honolulu Defense Forum when I was out there that I think is really aligned with the chairman's leadership and the ranking member's leadership and where we want to focus on acquisition reform. You talked about procurement that moves at the speed of combat, not the speed of committee or Congress, or we could use other C words. I just want to foot stomp that and thank you for saying that so directly. And again, I really appreciate the chair and the ranking member's leadership in pushing us as a whole committee to drive on that. And I know that you will continue to let us know specific reforms and needs as that goes through. I want to shift now to a separate but related topic. And again, I know we're talking about this a lot, but share, Mr. No, my colleague's concern and disappointment that we're not getting candid answers Frankly, even as a very junior military officer, I understood that all the elements of national power, diplomatic, information, military, and economic, have to be synchronized effectively. So I do think the committee and the American people are owed an answer on this. So I want to talk about the impacts to our allies that other colleagues have highlighted. The hypocrisy of asking allies and partners in Indo-PACOM to up their defense spending, up their burden sharing, and then hitting them with nonsensical, uninformed, and I think now clearly shown to be not even technically correct tariffs is I think, a massive own goal, as we would say with my 5- and 3-year-olds that I'm teaching soccer. Your testimony specifically calls out empowering our allies and commanders in your opening remarks as one of the keys to reestablishing deterrence in Indo-PACOM and achieving peace through strength. Yes or no, please? Do you think a 46, or does the department think a 46% tariff empowers Vietnam? Yes or no?
Congressman, I can't give a yes or no answer because the issue of tariffs is
on
purview of my position.
Do you think that a 25% tariff on South Korea empowers our allies and partners?
Same answer, Congressman.
General Brunson, do you think that empowers our allies and partners in South Korea?
Congressman, if I could just ask for a point of clarification. Now we're down to 25%. I would say that it impacts their budget, and so that's something else they'll have to work through the Korean government to solve.
Do you think it strengthens our partnership, yes or no?
Congressman, I cannot say that yet because I don't know the impacts of it. I've been here for a week, but we come through our recent exercise series. There have been no impacts to what I understand are purchases that are ongoing for the military element within Korea, and I believe that we're sound.
Thank you, General. On Australia, who everyone has acknowledged is our most strategic partner in Indo-PACOM, and Mr. Courtney spoke about this. Admiral Paparo, you called them our most strategic partner. Mr. No, you called them a key logistics hub. It's clear that they were blindsided in particular by this tariff, which I find particularly offensive given the time and investment all of us have spent in building that relationship and nurturing and growing that relationship, to the point that the Prime Minister said, quote, "The Trump administration's tariffs have no basis in logic, and they go against the basis of our two nations' partnerships." He's absolutely right. Does that tariff, can you at least acknowledge on AUKUS, given all the bipartisan work that's been done there, that hurts our relationship, Mr. No?
Congressman, we have a very strong relationship with Australia.
Yes or no? Does that help or hinder our partnership? To blindside an ally with such a forceful tariff?
I'm not here to talk about tariffs, Congressman.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Fallon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral, thank you for being here, and General as well, Mr. No. I like to keep things simple, basic. 20 years ago, would you agree, Admiral, that in the last 20 years, China's capabilities and ambitions have grown exponentially?
I have a direct view of that over that 20 years, yes.
And you'd agree they're a military peer now?
I do.
Same question, General.
Sir, looking through the DPRK lens, I would say yes on both counts.
Thank you. So how many, Admiral, how many Marines do we have on Okinawa today?
18,000.
And was it roughly the same 20 years ago?
20 years ago, it was about the same, yes, sir.
What's the end strength goal right now?
Presently, right now, 3rd Marine Expeditionary Force is at end strength as it's stationed where it is. It really is optimized.
Okay, and so there's no plans to reduce it from, say, 18,000, 19,000 to about half, 10,000?
There is the Defense Policy Renew Initiative, our agreement with Japan, and it's a conditions-based process, and ultimately 5,000 U.S. Marines are planned to be in Guam, and another 2,700 Marines are planned to be in Hawaii.
So given the considerations that we talk about with China and the threat, it's something that I would recommend we do is to renegotiate with our Japanese friends and keep those 18,000 or that strength, 18 to 19,000. Because if, God forbid, General, how many troops do we have in Korea in the 80s, roughly? Was it about 50,000? Is that right?
Congressman, it's a bit lower than that.
In the 40s? 45,000 or so?
A little bit lower than that.
40?
28.
So in the 80s, 30 years ago, we only had, I'm not talking today, what was it then?
60.
What was our high strength?
Probably about 60,000 when the division second idea.
And what is it now, about 30, about half?
About 30, sir.
Okay. So we've established that this threat has grown exponentially, and yet we've reduced our footprint. So God forbid, it's a simple question and an obvious answer, but God forbid there is a conflict on the Korean Peninsula. God forbid the Chinese do cross the Taiwanese Straits. Would you rather have 45 or 50,000 American troops on the peninsula, or would you rather have 30? It's obvious, right?
Yes, Congressman, it's an obvious answer.
You'd
always want more, but...
Of course. But the same thing, Admiral, in Okinawa, right? I mean,
if a little bit's good, a whole lot's better.
Yeah, and I'm not worried that it's going to capsize either. I think that's going to be solid. So, Admiral, we have a great many allies in the region, wonderful allies. Certainly, so many of them come to mind. But what I wanted to ask is, what country, in your view, is already an established model ally that we could, what is that model ally, and how can we foster more of our relationships to look like that one?
Indo-PACOM has 5 of the nation's 6 treaty allies in its AOR, and I have got tremendous pride in our execution of that alliance itself. Japan, South Korea, and Australia are very much model allies in their ability to provide capability, and the Philippines is growing. And we've recently had a very good engagement with Thailand, and they continue to contribute. Yeah,
Thailand's worrying me a little bit about cozying up to China. That's why we just is so important what we do here. So another question, I'm very curious to hear your answer. Which friend or friendly nation in Indo-PACOM presents the most promise and potential benefit for the United States in our interests in the future?
Vietnam and Indonesia, and India.
Yeah.
Absolutely, India above all others.
I noticed in India in 2007, they only bought about $230 million or so dollars worth of military equipment, and today it's neighboring around $24 billion. And it's very promising, but they're still playing with the Russians. And I get why, legacy systems and such, but they're still buying more from Russia. So we really do need to do, what do you think we can do to pull India more towards our sphere, if you will?
India's security cooperation sales with Russia is approximately 30% of their gear. No new buys on this. It's all buys to maintain the vestigial equipment that they had with India. They'll continue to treasure their non-aligned status, but they'll move more and more in partnership with the United States and the other market democracies as we move forward.
And just for the record, Mr. Chairman, I really hope that we do increase our footprint on the Korean Peninsula and in Okinawa. I think it's strategically important and vital, and I yield back. Thank you.
Thank the gentleman. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Hawaii, Ms. Takuda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Section 356 of last year's NDAA directed the Department of Defense to establish an advanced manufacturing facility to support submarine shipbuilding and the broader defense industrial base in the Indo-Pacific. I was proud to help secure this provision, and I'm keen to better understand how the department is implementing it. Admiral Paparo, as a primary user of this advanced manufacturing program, how does it support your requirement as the combatant commander? And how are you providing direction to the services and other entities to guide ongoing efforts related to advanced manufacturing in Hawaii to best support your needs?
Aloha, Congresswoman. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
We are implementing in partnership with Hawaii Community College and at Wheeler Airfield and Schofield Barracks to bring additive manufacturing in order to gain as much leverage as we can on the ability on scene to provide replacement capabilities, replacement parts, and to speed up our supply chains. We think this is a model everywhere, is to be at the point of need there. and greater investment in these capabilities. Additive manufacturing aided by AI is critical to us. I've made it a focus, as you know, having been on this mission for a good while. And I think one of the biggest barriers to it is going to be to ensure that the systems commands quickly assess the applicability of those components. And when they're finding them wanting, we run to the problem and improve it. And when they are adequate, quickly give authorities to employ those additive manufacturing capabilities to move faster, to repair gear, and to get it on the line faster.
Thank you, Admiral. I'm sure we'll have many more discussions on this. Right now, if I can pivot slightly a bit, Admiral, is it helpful to your work in the Indo-Pacific when our European allies support our deterrence in the Pacific, such as when Germany and France conducted Taiwan Strait transits last fall?
It is, and I commend our European partners for having been especially robust in 2024.
Thank you. And Mr. No, going back to the discussions about whether America first means America alone, Mr. No, does this administration agree that our European and NATO allies have an important role to play in the Indo-Pacific?
Congresswoman, the department does believe they have a role.
Is it an important role that they play, given that China is our pacing threat?
It's an important role. However, the Secretary has asked our European partners to first and foremost prioritize European continental security, to do more for their own backyard, first and foremost. But we will. So
you see it in a bit of a siloed effect in terms of stick to your region. Admiral Paparo, do you think China is watching our commitment in Ukraine? Do you believe China is engaging in the European theater, not sticking to their own region? I believe just recently Ukraine captured 2 men of Chinese origin fighting for Russia.
They did, and any success offensively in Europe will embolden the PRC in their own offensive ambitions.
Clearly, we can't disentangle the theaters like perhaps some in the administration might think we can, and I would hope that the administration's comments and actions going forward would reflect the global impacts that what happens in Ukraine does matter in terms of our ability to safeguard the Indo-Pacific and provide stability there. I just want to, with the time I have remaining, go to another question. Transactional relationships don't work in defense. They don't. Whether you're talking about tariffs, as has been talked about today, or demanding increased burden for defense costs, it undermines trust, it undermines commitment, and our ability to withstand adversity going forward. The president has talked about providing our allies even with toned-down versions of aircrafts because they may not always be our allies. Now, this does not, to me, project confidence to people that we want to fight side by side us in the case of aggression. Admiral Paparo, does this kind of transactional relationship that is being projected and these statements being made about providing our allies with substandard aircraft or equipment, does this help or hurt us in the Indo-Pacific?
Congresswoman, there are operational security requirements for those based on the ability of our partners to secure that information. We do our very best to get.
But do you feel, in the time I have remaining, that transactional relationships are a good foundation for defense partners in any region, especially the Indo-Pacific?
You know my commitment to authentic relationships with our allies and partners.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Guam, Mr. Moylan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. I'm happy to be here on such an important security hearing about my backyard in Indo-PACOM and the importance of Guam, where is my home, and to relay to our panel that we feel the pressures you do, we feel the stress, and we understand the threat from our adversities in this region. And I'm so happy you're there. I'm focusing on that because Guam is where our day begins. We are U.S. soil. We have many allies in the Indo-PACOM, and we're the closest body of land that the United States has to our allies. Allies are our friends, but Guam is USA, and we are family. So I appreciate your importance in making that interest number one for you folks. And part of that, as we grow, we know with the Marine Corps is building up on Guam with our Camp Ben Blas, and that agreement has gone since 2012. Where the United States and Japan came together, where Japan made an investment. Would you have an idea of that investment amount that Japan made for that move from Okinawa to help build the Camp Ben Blas?
I believe it's in the neighborhood of $3 billion. I'll also say, if I may, sir, have a day.
Have a day.
And your backyard is America's front yard in the homeland.
Amen. Thank you. How about the investments that the United States has made thus far for the buildup of the Camp Ben Blas?
I believe the majority of the burden has been borne by the Japanese.
Okay, and we're still pumping in money to get the continuation of getting that built. And there's a great investment the island of Guam has done with our infrastructure, working closely to ensure that our power, our water, our roads are built to withstand all this movement coming into from Okinawa to Guam. The 9,000, as you mentioned, close to 5,000 Marines to facilitate being on Guam. It has a great impact on Guam's economy and our community, and we've been focusing on this since 2012 and up to the future, and we still got years to go for its completion. So the concern is, though, there has been made a comment by a senior military officer that says possibly the move from Marines going from Okinawa to Guam, we're going in the wrong direction. But we have already invested in since 2012 in the NDAA, this investment to happen. So, Admiral Paparo, the Department of Defense, do you feel they are still committed to the agreement of the Marine forces to move from Okinawa to Guam?
Congressman, the DPRI, the Defense Policy Review Initiative, remains the program of record, and we are committed to executing it in a conditions-based manner.
Thank you, Admiral. In addition to all this investment with moving the Marines from Okinawa to Guam, we also have other natural disasters that has happened. Specifically in 2023, we had Typhoon Mawar, where we causing nearly $43 billion in damage to our island. One of the major things that was damaged also, and is one storm away from being completely destroyed, is the glass breakwater. Investments have been made, construction is happening, but this is the key. This is our only port for our supplies that supply our community and our military. If that fails, it's total destruction. And that's our only supply chain to get these ships unloaded. So since this is being rebuilt, I would ask you for an update on the progress of the project and the estimated completion date of the breakwater repairs.
Congressman, to my situational awareness, it's on track, but I owe you a more defined answer, and I'll give that to you in written form. But I believe it's on track. It can't happen fast enough for me, but I'll give you the specifics.
I appreciate that. And recently I was talking to our Joint Regional Micronesia, Admiral Hoffman, and he said he watched the rocks being replaced with the cranes. So we're moving forward, but I appreciate your updates on that as well. Just a few more minutes here. I got to ask some questions, but we also have some big investments going into the repairs in the Air Force. O&M investments, repairs for that. One specific thing, the category that when our storm tracker was tracking that was at a category 4 of destruction force, but then it blew away. So we need all these things to be repaired in time to properly prepare for the next battle with the next storm, if not our adversaries. So I wanted to know, we got some unfunded priority lists and how you are looking for that to be funded, and what you want Congress to help you with your priority list of unfunded priorities. We only have 16 seconds.
Guam Defense System is first and foremost, and I remind that remain on track and it deliver on time for Guam's defense as the homeland. And then in addition, our improvements to Andersen Air Force Base, to Northwest Airfield, to those capabilities, and the continued improvements to the submarine base.
Thank you,
Admiral. Thank you very much.
Time's expired. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Carbajal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Indo-PACOM is a region of consequence. China, our pacing challenge, is obviously there. So are some of our strongest allies like Japan, South Korea, and Australia. Then there are other nations we want to strengthen our relationships with to counter Chinese influence. I'd argue that actions taken by this administration, like cutting off all our foreign aid and imposing severe tariffs on multiple nations in the Indo-Pacific, friends and foes alike, have significantly diminished our soft power. Admiral Paparo, is soft power important in building and maintaining relationships with countries so we can provide an alternative to China?
Congressman, soft power is important.
No more?
Oh,
I like that answer, though.
I want to just give you something direct and plain spoken. I can't speak to the policy I executed as a military officer, but soft power is very important to us.
As a Marine, I understand your answer. Mr. No, same question to you.
Congressman, yes, it is important.
Then why is the administration cutting?
So, Congressman, on the issue of foreign aid, as you know, State Department has a lead for approving most foreign assistance programs. Department of Defense, we fully support reviews to ensure that American taxpayer dollars are spent to support concrete American interests. We will have honest conversations with our allies and partners about what America is able to do in the region, but we will absolutely make sure as the department that these foreign assistance programs are aligned with both the President and the Secretary's priorities and policies.
Well, it's contradictory to what this President and this administration is doing, so I appreciate your response. Admiral Paparo, do you feel you have the space capabilities and support you need in your AOR, including tactical surveillance, reconnaissance, and tracking? And what are the risks of losing space superiority?
We have shortfalls in our air-breathing ISR for persistent stare, and I would like to make up those shortfalls. And space superiority, domain awareness, space and counterspace are critical, indispensable, and would be the first battle and are critical to determining strategic, operational, tactical warning and gaining early leverage. That's the first battle, and it is primus et principis in ensuring our own capability to deter and to prevail.
Thank you. China is producing aircraft, ships, missiles, and satellites at rates we cannot match. They are closing the gap in the quality of systems and have passed us on quantity. Even combined with Japan, South Korea, and Australia, their systems outmatch ours by numbers. This war is something that we must try to avoid. Admiral Paparo, do China actions from their intense procurement of systems to aggressive actions in the South China Sea suggest there is a way to continue deterrence? And what can the U.S. and our allies do to detour a conflict with China?
Congressman, my first comment there is that we can match their capability, and it's a matter of will, and we have to get after it. And second of all is that we can deter them in those areas, and we have to work towards it. But we've got to preserve our combat capability that we have, and then we've got to build the right capabilities at the right time to continue overmatch. And I say that we can match, and it's a matter of will, not as a snarky way, but just as an expression of hope and determination.
Admiral, you could always be snarky here. It's welcome. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Mismer.
Thank you, Chairman, and I'd like to thank all the witnesses for their service and for being here today. Admiral Paparo, last year your predecessor was asked about the hypersonic threat in your AOR. He stated that hypersonic weapons would be a major threat to U.S. forces and a potential conflict in the region. 2 years ago, Vice Admiral John Hill, the MDA director, testified before this committee that fielding a defensive system against hypersonic threat in 2035 was irrelevant and didn't meet the threat. Do you agree with that testimony?
We have a now threat, sir, and I do agree.
Thank you very much. Are you able to satisfy your requirements when the previous administration consistently came to Congress with an anemic missile defense agency budget request?
Presently, I think the most important element is to keep those hypersonic weapons on the rails with counter C5 ISR, but I will not admit any complacency about our ability to execute that mission.
Okay, thank you. Would you agree that in the absence of a glide phase interceptor, we should look at stopgap measures?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Okay. While we're at it, can you comment on how our depletion of exquisite effectors in CENTCOM, in the CENTCOM AOR against cheap drones is affecting your ability to maintain the required magazine depth for your AOR?
We should equip our forces in the field with the right kind of capabilities that gets the numbers in the right way. so that we're not expending capabilities that cost millions against something that costs thousands.
Yep, agree. Also, Admiral Paparo, in your testimony, you state that the survivable long-range fires are a key priority for your area, AOR. When I hear that, I immediately think of hypersonic weapons. The Conventional Prompt Strike program is intended to provide much-needed long-range strike capability for deep inland targets. How important to you is that CPS gets deployed to your command on a submarine?
Critical on submarines, critical on the surface as well for the Army.
Okay. Also, the Navy is targeting 2028 for CPS to go on Zumwalt. If that program does not come to fruition, is it acceptable to wait until CPS is available to be put on a Block 5 Virginia submarine?
Need the capability now, and we need to go faster to get it on Zumwalt as well and get those Zumwalts stationed in Hawaii where they can be on point. Thank you, sir.
Perfect, thank you. You've also previously testified that SLICM enduring forward presence in the Western Pacific offers range, flexibility, and survivability to extend deterrence and assurance.
Congressman, I strongly endorse the acquisition of SLICM at soonest availability.
Not 2034?
20 now, sir.
Thank you. Has your command defined operational scenarios in which SLICM could be integrated into your theater operational plans?
Yes, sir, and we'll continue to do so.
Thank you. Also, Admiral Paparo, contested logistics will be critical capability to maintain our lethality and resupply not only of our forces, but of our allies in the Indo-Pacific. In your recent operational energy initiatives have been distracted with electrification and solar effects. What changes will you make to the Indo-Pac's operational energy effects, specifically related to investing in new, more resilient energy capabilities like advanced micronuclear reactors?
I'm strongly in favor of providing the right kind of energy into the theater and not to be at any deficit at all. And if small modular reactors deliver that, which I believe they do, I'm strongly in favor of them, provided that they're operated safely.
Thank you. Also, last year, the department announced it was cutting missile defense sites from 22 to 16 on Guam. Can you explain the plans for the committee, where you are in developing and implementing those plans?
Sir, Guam Defense System Tranche 1 will deliver in 2027. And I think to have our Guam Defense System, to have the effectiveness of the system be the driver for the acquisition of it, and to look at opportunities for directed energy, for electronic warfare, and to not fall in love with the plan, but to fall in love with the ability to defend effectively the homeland in Guam.
Thank you very much. I'll yield back the rest of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our overall strategy with China is one of deterrence. Given the strong support that China has had, critical support to Russia during its illegal and aggressive actions in Ukraine, and the fact that even recently 2 soldiers were captured who were Chinese, and we'll wait to see the implications of that, whether it's isolated or what the background is. How important is it in terms of deterrence that the U.S. and our allies, the over 50 countries that are participating in this, be successful in Ukraine and continuous in that effort to underscore our deterrence with China?
Congressman, I know that China is watching. I know China is directly supporting that effort. And I think that Russian success will embolden China, and Russian failure will give China pause and would enhance our deterrence.
And also, what effect would it have if somehow that 50-country coalition and the U.S. not working in concert with that 50-country coalition that it has led have to do with our other alliances in the Indo-Pacific, particularly countries like Australia and our Pacific allies as well? That kind of fragmentation could be a signal to China as well in terms of deterrence.
Well, sir, without a comment on policy and not having much insight into that coalition, just side-to-side insight, the credibility of our alliances and partnerships and the credibility of American commitment is critical to alliances and partnerships, and that remains a key and critical strategic center of gravity for the United States.
And how would you assess the evolving threats posed by China, Russia, and North Korea, particularly in the multi-domain operations such as cyber and space warfare?
I give them great respect, and that great respect that I give them deserves a robust, dominating response from the United States of America. And they've got a lot of game in those domains, and we've got to stay on top of it. Even North Korea, with their the way they operate in the crypto markets, it requires a lot of attention and the ability to thwart that.
Great. Well, I just want to thank you for your service, all of you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Harrigan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Gentlemen, thanks for your testimony this morning. Very much appreciate it. And just got a couple questions for you. One thing I've noticed, and I think we all understand, is that the Indo-Pacific is truly the pacing threat and theater for strategic competition. That is happening right now. And there is no doubt that the lessons that we are learning in Ukraine show us that low-cost innovation is starting to dominate the battlefield. This is a particular concern for me as we look at China because of the discrepancy between what China can produce against our dollars versus what we can produce here in our country. I think most times when a product is purchased in China and then sold in the United States, it's sold for approximately 3 to 6 times, depending on the distribution model, what it actually costs to produce in China. So when we look dollar to dollar against what China is spending on their defense, what the United States is spending on our defense, what we're spending here, there's actually, you can't compare it dollar for dollar because those dollars are representative of a very different production capacity. And this has me very concerned, particularly with SUAS and small drones as we wrap in the lessons that we're learning from Ukraine. And I think that we've come to a point where we have $2,500 drones that are truly threatening multi-hundred million, if not billion-dollar assets. The ranking member talked about how Russia's Black Sea naval fleet has been in part scuttled by a force that has no navy of its own. Truly remarkable times and incredible threats. 80% of the Russian casualties that are being caused in the Ukrainian theater are being caused by FPV drones. And it's estimated right now that China's drone output in 2024 was $29.4 billion, which is at least 4 times the amount of money that the United States is spending, obviously with far lower, by an order of magnitude, unit costs. China's continued modernizing its FPV, swarm, and biomimetic drone capabilities. So I want to talk about the Chinese drone advantage that we see today. What threats does China's dominance in the global drone market pose for U.S. national security in the event of a potential conflict?
Congressman, China dominates the drone industry just by dint of their capacity to build them. Many of the long lead critical items that go into any drone are made in the People's Republic of China. So diversifying our supply chains in order to ensure that we're not dependent on China to acquire the drones that we need to deter China is absolutely critical.
General Brunson, do you have anything to add for?
Yeah, I would, Congressman, and thank you. I can see without my glasses that you have served, so thank you for that, sir. One of the things that we want to try to bring to Korea is, I think what we might be able to do is to innovate better. So if you're familiar with the Army's Transforming in Contact Part 1 and 2 TAC 0, There's some technology that's being put forward now that's going to allow us to 3D print drones. And so we can have our own autonomous swarms that we could go counter with. We're also looking to invest in other counter UAS technologies as we've seen the hardening along the DPRK border within the DMZ. We've got to be able to see a bit further. And other things that we might be able to do in order to improve our ability to understand our operating environment is the use of technologies that already exist that would give us the same advantages. High altitude balloons, for example, could be used to great effect, in particular on the peninsula.
Are we doing any of these initiatives at the scale we need to do them in order to accomplish your strategic objectives that you've been given?
I'm dissatisfied with the scale. I'm dissatisfied with the speed, and we have to go faster, work harder, and get better. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen. Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chairman, the gentleman makes an excellent point, though, about Chinese spending. You cannot compare it dollar for dollar with the budgets of our country for defense spending or any other country. It is not apples to apples. And that's just one of many illustrations that I'm glad that you pointed out. We now return to the gentlelady from California, Ms. Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here. Mr. No, first I want to turn to you. In your testimony, you frequently emphasize the importance of a whole-of-government approach to counter Chinese influence in the Pacific Islands. Yet, the administration has significantly cut funding to USAID and other humanitarian programs that traditionally are a part of a whole-of-government integrated strategy. Building on the question from my colleague, Mr. Carbajal, can you clearly explain how the reduction in U.S. economic and humanitarian engagement undermines our ability to implement this whole-of-government approach and directly hands China greater leverage?
Congresswoman, as I stated earlier, the State Department has lead for approval.
I'm not asking about the State Department. I'm asking about your testimony about whole-of-government approach.
So I'd be happy to talk about what the Department of Defense is doing in the Pacific Island countries. We have extensive engagements in security cooperation programs under Title 10, Section 333. We work with these countries to improve their cybersecurity, enhance their maritime domain awareness. We conduct regular exercises. Of course, the focus is on posture and warfighting capabilities, but these are things that we do with many of these countries. The COFAs, the Compacts of Free Association that we have with three countries in particular, Palau, Federated States of Micronesia, and the Republic of Marshall Islands. That's another big emphasis of the department. We're doing a lot of great work.
Yep.
With them.
I understand all of the work that the department is doing in the Pacific Islands, but your testimony mentions whole of government, and DoD only is not a whole of government approach. Admiral Paparo, in response to a question by my colleague, Mr. Garamundi, you said that while review of USAID is ongoing, you would advocate for robust USAID in your AOR. Can you expand on why you think USAID funding is so important and how it helps you succeed in your overall mission?
Our USAID programs, particularly the ones that work on necessities, food, water, medical, and critical infrastructure, they're key and critical to these poor areas, and they enable us to compete against the People's Republic of China, who operate in the same domains.
Thank you. Now I want to turn to Taiwan. I think it's important for us to recognize what kinds of U.S. actions actually help shore up Taiwan's defenses and what kind of actions can contribute to escalation and actually make Taiwan less safe. For instance, the training and weapons the United States has provided over the years has helped Taiwan's ability to defend itself in the event of invasion, and we haven't actually seen that spark escalation with the PRC. On the other hand, symbolic types of support like high-profile visits or Secretary Hegseth's over-the-top rhetoric during his recent trip to Panama seemed to have a more escalatory effect without actually making Taiwan any safer. So, Admiral Paparo, could you discuss ways in which the department is ensuring we're not unnecessarily escalating tensions and maintaining open lines of communication with the PRC?
Congresswoman, the policy, enshrined in the 3 communiques, the 6 assurances, and the Taiwan Relations Act, stipulates that defensive services and defensive capability shall be provided to Taiwan while the department maintains the capacity to resist any resort to force that jeopardizes the social, political, and economic system of Taiwan. Sticking strictly to that policy and ensuring that that policy has the credibility that it requires. What comes to mind is the third communique from August of 1982, I believe it was, which was that those services shall decrease with the demilitarization of the Taiwan Strait. And so being sensitive to affirm the three communiques, but to also execute them in accordance to the letter and spirit that they were initiated with is very important to us.
Thank you, Admiral Paparo. Mr. No, do you believe Secretary Hegseth's very over-the-top rhetoric on Taiwan actually aligns with our stated policy as the United States?
Congresswoman, I would disagree that anything Secretary Hegseth stated about Taiwan is over the top. He has emphasized the importance of reestablishing deterrence and doing so in the Indo-Pacific. And the department is moving with urgency and focus to do just that.
Thank you. Deterrence is very important. Things we do that unnecessarily escalate without actually making Taiwan any safer are the opposite of deterrence. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll yield back.
I thank the gentlelady for yielding. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. McGuire.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. Mr. No, you're doing a great job. I really appreciate what President Trump is doing, what Pete Hegseth is doing to return our military to lethality. We're eradicating the divisive ideologies from our military, and it is working. What I understand is recruitment is up, and I've spoken with soldiers, airmen, and Marines, and others around my district, and even on the southern border, and morale is way up. You know, we wouldn't have a country without our men and women in the military. So for all our service members, all our veterans here, thank you for what you do to keep us safe. It's great to see my Navy SEAL brother, Fleet Master Chief David Ism here today, and I see this as a way to continue service to our country. I think we would all agree that we have many threats at home and abroad, and you guys have covered a lot of territory today, and I'd like to talk about aircraft carriers. I'd like to focus on their role, in, Admiral, in your area of operation, area of responsibility. I know you're pleased that the USS George Washington, CVN-73, has rejoined the forward deployed naval forces in Yokosuka, Japan. I also note that the USS Carl Vinson, CVN-70, the French aircraft carrier Charles de Gaulle, and the Japanese aircraft carrier Kaga all participated in a recent joint exercise in the Philippine Sea. The USS Nimitz, CVN-68, our nation's oldest aircraft carrier, I must have been around a while because I remember when that came into service nearly 50 years ago, is now deployed on what is likely her final deployment and heading west. The Secretary of Defense has emphasized the need to restore deterrence of our military and to achieve peace through strength. How do you see aircraft carriers' role in the deterrence mission, especially in the Indo-Pacific area, your area of responsibility?
Congressman, carriers are absolutely critical in the weight of fires that they can bring, which is many, many times X almost any other capability. And when knitted together with the rest of the joint force, they're part and parcel of an all-domain force executing every mission from ASW to strike to air superiority. It's a mobile, capable airfield that the enemy would have to work very hard to target. And they work hard to target them because they are so afraid of them. So absolutely critical with the joint force, not at the exclusion of any other force, but in complement to that to achieve those critical missions. The PRC demands information, air, and maritime superiority as a pretext for their operations. Aircraft carriers are critical to contesting and gaining those superiorities.
Well, I certainly support those efforts, and Admiral, I'd like to thank you for your response. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to submit for the record a recent U.S. Naval Institute Proceedings article entitled Aircraft Carriers Still Indispensable, written by Admiral Paparo, that provides an excellent summary of the case for aircraft carriers as a cornerstone for our national defense.
Without objection, so ordered.
All right, Admiral, as well, when you consider the potential conflict in the Indo-Pacific, contested logistics will be a critical capability to maintain our lethality and resupply, not only for our forces, but also our allies in the region. Do you share this sentiment?
Most strongly. Our adversaries note that believe that the Pacific War was built on the ability to sustain, and I agree with them.
What changes would you make to INDOPACOM's operational energy efforts? You know, in my district, we have a nuclear power plant. We are building a small modular reactor, but I believe the world's first micro reactor is about to come from my district. And how important is that to helping you do your job?
Sir, accepted. I mean, particularly the incredible efficiency of a nuclear reactor, with uranium delivering at its own critical levels 3 million megajoules per power per kilogram. It's incredibly efficient. It's small, modular, and you know, I can't endorse that enough.
It sounds great. Well, what can we do here in Congress? I think we're all supportive, but in your words, what can we do to better support the warfighters to give you a chance to win the fight and come home?
Sir, continued funding streams, and if continuing resolutions are a feature and not a bug, I'm not making a comment on that, putting the kind of provisions within continuing resolutions to be able to execute every program that we have, and authorities that enable a steady flow of funding, which provides a steady flow of predictability for the defense industrial base, which enables them to recruit, hire, train, retain workforce so that we can be at full capacity.
Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. Chair, and I recognize Ms. Strickland.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers and Ranking Member Smith. I have the honor of representing Joint Base Lewis McChord, home to tens of thousands of active duty service members, including the 1st Multi-Domain Task Force and future elements of the 3rd MDTF, 5th Security Forces Assistant Brigade, 1st Special Forces Group, and America's First Corps. And it's great to see you, General Bunsen. Those stars look good on you. All of these things are regionally aligned toward the Indo-Pacific theater, and JBLM plays a central role in the U.S.'s ability to ensure a free and open Indo-Pacific. I'm going to talk about 2 issues. I will start with climate change and then the alliances and partnerships of AUKUS. Admiral Paparo, how are the U.S. military operations and plans being affected by factors like rising sea level, extreme heat, and displacement in heavily populated coastal areas?
Some of our efforts align our Pacific Partnership and our operations with the typhoon season within the Pacific so that we can be more ready to respond to humanitarian assistance, disaster relief. Similarly, many of our expeditionary engineering capabilities work on key critical infrastructure, particularly through the Pacific Island countries. And so that ability to respond is front of mind.
Thank you. Mr. No, under President Trump and Secretary Hegseth's leadership, DOD is now canceling programs that do a few things: extend range and on-station time, mitigate contested logistic challenges, and make our forces easier to detect by lowering thermal signatures, all because these programs also happen to have a climate benefit. In his approach, Secretary Hegseth said, quote, "We do not do climate change crap." And this approach is actually curbing innovation and making us less ready. They don't make us more lethal, they don't protect our troops, and they don't help us confront a peer competitor. How can the department prepare for the realities of a conflict in Indo-PACOM, an environment of censorship where key decisions are being made because of a catchphrase instead of the actual benefits that protect our warfighters?
Congresswoman, the focus of the department is and will remain on strengthening our posture and warfighting capabilities. And I believe the President's budget, which will be released soon, will reflect both the priorities of the President and the Secretary's priority of reestablishing deterrence in the Indo-Pacific.
Okay, so the 3 things I mentioned specifically: extending range and station time, mitigating contested logistics, and making our forces harder to find by lowering thermal signatures. Are those things actually going to happen, even though the Secretary said that this was climate change crap?
Congresswoman, that's an issue I'll have to take back and follow up with you on.
Okay, so you don't know?
I'm not sure, no.
Okay, thank you. Now I want to switch over to AUKUS. And we know that this particular partnership is incredibly important. It prevents Chinese malign influence and actually reduces costs for the U.S. So, Admiral, Can you talk about how this partnership has already benefited the U.S. and what capabilities it's delivering to our Australian allies?
Congresswoman, first is that it's benefited us in the contributions that Australia's made to the defense industrial base to the amount of $3 billion in order to enhance the submarine industrial base's capability to deliver on Pillar 1. Second, the working towards submarine rotational force Sterling would give the United States a Indian Ocean capability, which is more responsive to the South China Sea and gives us the ability to operate with submarines with impunity without having to go through straits in the Indian Ocean and its approaches through the critical straits of Malacca, of Lombok, and of Sunda, among others. And then on Pillar 2, Australia hits way, way above its weight from a cyber standpoint. It does some critical things that really complement what we do. So AUKUS is a winner in every way for Indo-Pacific Command.
Thank you. And then, Mr. No, are there any obstacles that you think the U.S. faces in fully implementing AUKUS, and specifically upholding our partnership, particularly in transferring 3 to 5 Virginia-class submarines?
Congresswoman, I think our industrial capacity remains a limiting factor. We're able to produce 1.28 Virginia-class submarines a year. That number needs to be above 2 for us to both fulfill our own submarine requirements and to fulfill our obligations to Australia under Pillar 1. So that.
Thank you. And you may want to tell your boss that some of the trade decisions that are being made actually have time.
Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from Virginia, Ms. Kiggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you so much to our panelists and for your years of service to our great nation. I have the privilege of representing Hampton Roads, which is home to the Atlantic Fleet, also home to East Coast Ship Repair and Shipbuilding, and just thousands of military families and personnel, especially that are Navy members. So I want to focus on the Navy for a few minutes, but Admiral Paparo, we know that if conflict were to arise in Indo-PACOM area of responsibility, the men and women of Hampton Roads would be on the front lines of that fight. And I know that we are very focused on the Pacific and on the West and on the West Coast, but can you just speak to me about the importance of the Atlantic Fleet in your mission in the Indo-Pacific? Because we know that when things arise in the Middle East, Israel is a perfect example. After October 7th, we sent the Ford and the Eisenhower to that region of the world, but the Indian Ocean and the Indo-Pacific is not too far away. So just speak to me about the important role of the Atlantic Fleet and specifically the carrier air wings from Naval Air Station Oceana in my district, what that means to your mission.
Congresswoman, thank you also for your service to the nation as a U.S. naval aviator and those of the many members of your family that have served or are serving at this very time. And you make a great point, and that point is that all of the Joint Force is designed that it must be responsive to any threat anywhere, that the rebalance to the Pacific has got to have the capability to have the total balance going to the Pacific within weeks. And so presently in our plans of record, the Atlantic Fleet is very well represented in the Indo-Pacific, and not just in the Indian Ocean, but in the Pacific itself. It would be key and critical and indispensable to combat success.
And how important to your mission is investment in the upkeep of places like our East Coast master jet base that would provide those carrier air wings?
There can be no difference across the force from a standardization standpoint about the readiness of the facilities to support training and operations. And that is precisely because every force has got to be ready to fight the pacing threat.
And so we currently have F-18 squadrons, which are great in fulfilling the mission, but are also aging. And so I just want to ask you specifically, how would an F-35 integration help with your mission?
F-35s are critical, and we cannot make that transition fast enough across the force, and F-35s must be a part of the Atlantic Fleet, in my humble opinion.
Thank you for that answer. And now I want to move to shipbuilding. And we continue to decommission ships at a rate that far outpaces new construction, even as many of these platforms are still operational and actively deployed. In some cases, we're investing in maintenance and upgrades only to retire the ship as soon as it returns to port from deployment. Given our growing global commitments and the urgent need for naval presence, how does this approach make sense, Admiral Paparo, and why are we decommissioning ships when we are clearly short on capacity?
I think if the ship, given the fact that the ship is relevant and given that there's the proper balance of investment in the ship so that the return on investment is right, and getting absolutely the most relevance out of the most relevant ships until the capacity of the United States is built up so that they can be replaced. I think I'm not a proponent of divest to invest. I'm a proponent of make before break. And I'd prefer not to decommission combat-relevant capabilities until its replacement is on board, so its sailors and Marines can properly transfer to that platform and get into the fight.
Agree. We need all the ships we can get, and even an old ship is better than no ship. And speaking again about shipbuilding, I know that when we had the opportunity to visit Pearl Harbor, you spoke about the fact that I think it was only 17% of your high school graduates are attending colleges or university, and the lines at the shipyard for those skilled trade jobs are so long. So what are you doing in Pearl Harbor in Hawaii that is working that we might apply to other shipbuilding and ship repair locations like Hampton Roads?
And so Hawaii is very unique. And that Pearl Harbor Naval Shipyard is a incredibly valued profession in Hawaii, which confers that there's a waiting list in order to get onto the rolls as a shipyard worker. And as a result, because of the experience of the shipyard force, Pearl Harbor delivers its projects ahead of schedule and usually below budget. And that's a great model. And I think outreach in individual communities that similarly reflect and model that process where it's a highly valued profession, making sure that we keep pace from a pay standpoint, that we're not outcompeted for pay for shipyard workers, because 90% of any organization's hiring problems can be solved with pay.
Gentlelady's time's expired. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from California, Mr. Cisneros.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank our witnesses for being here today. And Admiral, I want to thank your Fleet Master Chief for your career, sir, and everything that you've done for this nation. Chiefs run the Navy. I'm a former naval officer. I can tell you one thing that when I left the Navy, I wish I still had I wish I could have took my chief with me there. The senior enlisted are a valuable asset to our military, and we need to do what we can to make sure that we support them in any way possible. I also want to say, just go back to Mr. Courtney's comments about the tariffs and what they are doing, Mr. No. The fact that we have three nations, Japan, South Korea, and China, that are coming together because of these tariffs, and these are three nations that have a history of contention. You may say it's not the tariffs don't affect the military, but it is going to have an effect later on in the military, and so the Department of Defense should definitely be speaking up on that there, because it is going to affect us at some point. General Brunson, I'm going to start with you, sir. We've seen the DRP, the DPRK, and Iran provide support to Russia during the Ukrainian conflict, supplying soldiers, munitions, critical minerals. The strengthening of these relationships continues to undermine the security and stability of the Indo-Pacific region. What are we seeing in the reverse as far as, those Russia, China supplying materials, technology, and things to North Korea? And really, what have we learned from the North Korean army, what their experience there in Ukraine that is going to benefit you and your knowledge?
Yes, sir. So one of the first things I would say is I'm concerned with, more importantly, what's coming back versus what's going out. Mm-hmm. I can see very, very well all the things that are going out. But coming back is technology. Coming back is critical munitions that are coming back there. What's coming back is critical materiel, which is changing our operating environment in a large way. And then what it's causing us to really do is look at how we might counter those things, that we might be able to continue to deter them, or have Kim Jong-un say, not today. not today. And some of that has to do with the posture that we take as we sort of organize ourselves differently within our operating environment. And I think that another thing that I'm looking at routinely is how am I communicating those things back out? How am I going back to ensure that not only our friends, partners, and allies are also witting to this, but how am I communicating back with Indo-PACOM to ensure that we are able to talk about the changes that we might have in our OE as well?
Have you learned lessons from about the North Korean Army, about how they've been operating and what they've been doing in Ukraine that are going to be valuable to you?
Yes, sir. We most certainly have.
Good. Thank you. Admiral, you and your fellow COCOMs are competing for assets continually, whether it be the aircraft carriers, air squadrons, special operation forces, Patriot missile batteries. Can you discuss the challenges that you're facing there in trying to respond to China's operations while you're competing for those assets?
Yes, Congressman. Understanding that there's a high demand for the global force is just my job. So mitigating that when the commander-in-chief makes a decision to shift one capability to another theater and to be able to mitigate for that. And sometimes it's the substitution of other relevant capabilities. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it's knowing what the response time is of that capability to restore it to the Indo-Pacific. All those are important factors. And so our job is to take the policy decisions and to mitigate those, to express the risk, and to do our very best to restore deterrence and to provide the indications and warnings if it has to return to a theater that has more exigent needs.
Okay. With that, thank you very much for that answer, Admiral. And I got about 30 seconds left, so I'm just going to yield my time back. Thank you.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. McCormick.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's great to see you again. First of all, congratulations for a well-served career for a Fleet Command Master Chief, just phenomenal. That steely stare just kind of gives me flashbacks of when I was on the drill field, just wondering what the next fate was going to be. But I got a coin for you in the fine military tradition. When we get done with this, I'd love you to accept it. Admiral, when I was out there with your command recently, you gave the best brief I've ever gotten. Literally, I just thought phenomenal overview of that, the importance of that region, 70% of the world's wealth going through that for trade, 70% of the world's population, a bunch of military forces. Really excited about what you bring to the future vision of the military. I'm really, what a great visionary you are, and I'm looking forward to working with you too, General, in that really important region. I'm sure we'd love to turn in our ties for a flight suit or an M4 and go out there and be on the pointy end of the spear, but yet here we sit, determining the fate of the world as we seek it. I'm curious right now with what's going on in North Korea, and I'd let either one of you can speak on this. The instability that region right now and seeing what their government's doing with their former government, their current government, and the importance of somebody we fought alongside of, not just in Korea, but in Vietnam and other regions, what they can bring to the table still, and can we count on them in this regional conflict?
Thank you for the question, sir, and I appreciate it sincerely that I can just share with you what I'm seeing there in Korea right now. Their system works. That's the first and foremost thing I would want everyone to know, is that the Korean system works. We'll have an election soon. We'll have a new president. Our commander-in-chief recently made a call to the acting president of the Republic of Korea, and our military relationships are absolutely sound and solid. We most recently exercised in large scale during Freedom Shield, one of our largest exercises, which includes the Republic of Korea's government as part of the exercise. We had some 4,000 Marines in the KTO exercising live, virtual, constructive, some 51 separate events that went on there. I believe that the situation we find ourselves in right now is one where we're going to continue to increase our capacity. There was talk earlier of investments being made. I'm very pleased with the investments that are being made by the Republic of Korea military writ large across their joint force, and I'm especially excited about the opportunities that we have to collaborate in a combined fashion to produce effects on the Korean Peninsula.
Fantastic. Yeah. As a guy who spent several tours over there with the ROK Marines, knowing their motto, Pilsung, which means, must win, victory. They only have one objective. They only have one battlefield, one enemy, and if they lose, they're all dead. So I hope they resonate around that message and understand their mission and their importance to us in that regional conflict. There's been a lot of questions, Mr. No, about the tariffs and the impact of the relationships between our country. I'm going to ask you to agree with something I'm about to state because you say, this is not really my field, and they've said, but you got to bring it back to the Secretary of Defense, make sure he understands. One thing that we all understand as military guys who've seen what everybody understands around the world is strength. Doesn't matter if you're Asian, doesn't matter if you're Arab, it doesn't matter if you're African, it doesn't matter if you're Latino. Everybody understands strength. And I think if we come from a position of strength, the results are obvious. What I've seen with the tariffs is now for the first time in my lifetime, 0-0 tariffs reciprocating from Japan, Vietnam, Cambodia, Israel, India, the entire European Union, and more to follow. 50 countries come to the table saying 0-0. Could we ask for a better result in tariff negotiations that puts in a position of strength? Because everybody understands fairness, and there's nothing more fair than a 0-0 tariff. And it's more beneficial to the United States because we've been at a disadvantage all this time. And I think it puts us in a position where people understand strength and fairness as well as anybody, and especially in the Indo-Pacific region, where people understand the Bushido. They understand strength, they understand fairness, they understand honor. And I think it puts us in a very good position if you have any comment on that.
Congressman, of course, the President emphasizes needing to negotiate from a position of strength, and that's something Secretary Hegseth strongly believes in as well.
I think that pretty much sums it up, and I'm out of time at this point. But once again, to the Commanding Master Chief, congratulations on a well-deserved career ending, and we look forward to fine things in the afterlife. Semper Fi.
All right. Chair now recognizes the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Sorensen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning. Welcome to our witnesses, Mr. No, Admiral Paparo, and General Brunson. Thank you for your insights, for your leadership as we face a new realm in the Indo-Pacific. I'd like to first take a minute to acknowledge Taiwan, both as a democracy and a strategic ally. While we work to boost our own domestic semiconductor manufacturing capabilities, we must ensure that Taiwan is able to contribute to our supply chains. Working together to develop new technology and innovation means that we work together to make both of us secure. That means that we must also remain steadfast partners in the region as China continues to develop its offensive power. Mr. No, I'll begin with you. Last week, President Trump announced that he would impose a 32% tariff on Taiwanese goods. I don't know if that number has changed in the past 15 minutes or not. If we hurt the Taiwanese economy, how can the administration demand that Taiwan spend more on its own defenses?
Congressman, the department is working to prioritize our security assistance to Taiwan. Currently, we're leveraging the different tools we have at our disposal, whether that's PDA, FMF, FMS, or TISCI, the Taiwan Security Cooperation Initiative. Arming Taiwan and strengthening Taiwan's defense capabilities is extremely important for not only the defense of Taiwan, but for strengthening our posture and reestablishing deterrence. So we're moving quickly to do that, and we're committed to doing so.
So what I'm hearing from you is there is 100% connection between Taiwan and the United States with this relationship?
Congressman, the future of Taiwan does matter to American interests.
Admiral Paparo, in your written testimony, you mentioned how critical our European allies like the UK and France are to security in the Indo-Pacific. How important is the all-of-the-above approach to keeping the region secure?
Congressman, the more partners and allies that demonstrate that they have concurrence on the security interests of the world, noting that the world globally will be highly, if not completely affected by conflict in the Indo-Pacific. And when a partner demonstrates their expression of will by putting key capability in the Indo-Pacific, it confers more legitimacy and more leverage on the cause that the Taiwan Strait matter shall not be changed by force.
I appreciate that. Mr. No, I want to go back to the discussion on North Korea. Besides strengthening our force posture in the region, how is the Trump administration planning to address North Korean aggression? And will President Trump be sitting down with Kim Jong-un?
Congressman, on your last question, I cannot speak for the president on whether he will do so, but I will focus on and explain to you what the department is doing. North Korea poses a serious threat, not just because of its nuclear arsenal, but due to its development of missiles that are capable of targeting not only our allies in the region, but also the United States homeland. So we will continue to work with our South Korean allies, and of course, General Brunson and our team at USFK to make sure we have a strong deterrence posture to deter the North Korean threat.
Both the Admiral and the General have mentioned in their testimonies that North Korea is seeking Russia's help in developing more advanced satellites and drones, missiles, and submarines. Mr. No, what is being done to prevent coordination between Russia and North Korea, especially since we've just found out the news yesterday that we have Chinese fighting alongside Russians against Ukraine?
Congressman, I'd be happy to have this discussion more in depth in a classified setting. Happy to follow up there.
Okay, we'll do that, and I'll yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Crank.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. No, Admiral, General, thank you all for your service to our country. I know each of you have served, and I appreciate all the years and decades that you've served our country. Admiral, and I apologize, I missed a lot of your verbal testimony. We've got another subcommittee, and I had 32 amendment votes in that committee, so I'm sorry about that. But I'm real encouraged. I did read your testimony. I'm real encouraged to see a sizable section of your written testimony dedicated to discussing Indo-PACOM's collaboration with Space Command and how vital intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and tracking capabilities are to winning the fight. And I fully agree with you when you say, quote, space superiority is essential to Indo-PACOM's operations across all domains, unquote. And I want to start by asking you the same question that I've asked all of our combatant commanders. And I understand that it's difficult to answer in detail in open forum. But in your opinion, is the space-based threat to the U.S. posed by Russia and China greater, lesser, or the same than it was 4 years ago?
Sir, Congressman, it is unequivocally greater and growing by leaps and bounds for China by year, and also Russia's working very hard on it.
And we may follow up in closed session a little more on that as well. Admiral, you also say in your testimony, U.S. Indo-PACOM requires enhanced ground-based space surveillance networks throughout the Indo-Pacific region. Can you provide more information on the systems or capabilities you need to win the fight?
Sir, may I please defer to our classified session?
Of course. Thank you. And then we can talk about some other questions there, I guess, in classified session. Will the needs that you have in these areas, and we can talk about them more later, will they be reflected in the budget requests submitted to this committee?
Sir, they are reflected in detail in my 1313 report and are provided in detail.
Okay. Thank you, Admiral. I appreciate it. And I'll yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair now recognizes the gentlelady from New Hampshire, Ms. Goodlander.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to our witnesses for being here today. Admiral, you are the commander of America's oldest and largest combatant command. I just want to begin by talking about the threats we face. Can you confirm for us what your current assessment is of the top threat to our national security that America currently faces in the Indo-Pacific region?
Congresswoman, the People's Republic of China and their capabilities they built within the People's Liberation Army are the biggest threat to the security, the freedom, and the well-being of the nation. Russia also has a sizable Pacific fleet. with whom they are growing in their exercises with the PRC. And I also acknowledge the threat of North Korea, which is significant and growing in cooperations with the others, and violent extremist groups as well.
Thank you for that, Admiral, and thank you for your testimony on the importance of public shipyards in this country. My home state that I'm proud to represent, of New Hampshire, plays a central role in our maritime security, and protecting the livelihood of our shipyard workers is a top priority for me here in Congress. I want to ask you about China's growing aggression in the maritime domain. We just saw last month the threat that Chinese warships pose to our partner, Australia. How should we be thinking about China's growing naval capabilities, and who our most important partners and allies will be in addressing this line of threat?
Well, thanks for affirming the role of, Congresswoman, thanks for affirming the role of public shipyards. My dear father was a shipyard worker at a shipyard that is no longer in commission. That's what he did for his life's work. So thank you for that. And Portsmouth Naval Shipyard is tops, absolutely tops. And we affirm that, and we benefit directly for that in Indo-PACOM. The People's Republic of China are building 6 combatants per year. They are actively building aircraft carriers, and they're getting better. They've embarked on a program of nuclear ballistic missile attack submarines. They're working on the next generation. They're working on nuclear-powered submarines in their Shang 3 series, and they're building at a high rate. But as we think about it too, it's not just Navy on Navy, because when we say all domain, that is really the capability of the entire joint force to action that which is threatening us, and to do so in unison, to be affecting it cross-domain. So these rates of build are concerning, and we've got to pace that with the entire joint force, but that includes significantly increasing our shipmaking capability.
Thank you for that. You've testified that America's network of allies and partners is our most significant asymmetric advantage in the Indo-Pacific region. We heard testimony yesterday about the importance of the role that our support for Ukraine has in deterring threats in Europe. Does our support for Ukraine deter threats in the Indo-Pacific region?
Congresswoman, Russian failure and/or Russian success has a direct bearing on the PRC's calculus, and they're watching very closely.
So I want to ask more about how we strengthen our partners and allies. I agree with what has been said by many of my colleagues in this hearing. I'm very concerned about what impacts a global trade war against some of our most important allies in the region will have on our national security and our national defense. General, I want to ask you about South Korea. You testified just a few minutes ago that the South Korean system is working. It's in the midst of a constitutional crisis right now. What do you see? Why is that system working, and what have been the most important checks in that system for the continuance of South Korea's democracy?
Briefly, I will say simply that they read their rules. They understand the rule of law well. They also are following exactly what they said they were going to do. They were going to send things to a constitutional court. They were going to continue to move forward. What I would like to note is the stabilizing force that the military's been in that country, whether it be wildfires in the east, or a training incident which affected a great portion of the population. The military has been able to do all the things that are necessary for that country to give time and space for their constitution to do exactly what it said it was going to do.
Gentlelady's time's expired. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Gooden.
Thank you, and thank you all. Admiral, I had just some brief questions for you about, first, artificial intelligence, successful integration of AI and machine learning into command and control functions is a key challenge for our military. And near-peer conflict will require robust C2 systems that can not only ingest massive quantities of data across the kill chain, but can also generate operational insight at the tactical edge and in denied environments. Given the commercial platforms that have been validated by Indo-PACOM, how are you using commercial capabilities to meet these needs.
Congressman, we're in run at U.S. INDOPACOM as an AI-enabled headquarters, not to replace human judgment, but to augment it. And so the employment of AI models, I won't tell you what the names of them are, just in the interest of ethics, in conjunction with cutting-edge command and control systems, and then linking both our top secret databases, our secret databases, and its own open source learning models from which there is a rich data field, is enabling us to make better decisions faster at the strategic level, at the operational level as we link the functions of command and control, information, intelligence, movement maneuver, fires, security, and protection. And this has got to take place at the strategic level for decision-making, operationally and linking those functions, and on the tactical edge from swarming capabilities so that just to increase the efficiency and the effectiveness of the force that we have far above what our adversaries can.
Do you feel like we're ahead of the curve in that respect?
You pay me to be never ahead of the curve. And so I never view that we're ahead of the curve, too. I think we're doing some cutting-edge things. I know that our adversaries are working on it, too, and you pay me to do those things better and faster than the other guys do.
Well, thank you. I still want to keep visiting. Changing course here, in October of 2023, the Defense Logistics Agency conducted a war game simulation known as Camoland, and that demonstrated severe domestic production capability gaps in the clothing and textile supply chain. And the war game also showed that DLA stockpiles were unable to fully mitigate wartime demand and would have resulted in the military personnel lacking uniforms, combat boots, and the corresponding physical protection. There was language in the 25-year NDAA directing DoD to expedite this presidential determination that action needed to be taken, and DoD has not requested a PD for items such as American-made body armor, ballistic helmets, ballistic plates, and organizational clothing and individual equipment. And I know I'm catching you off guard, perhaps, so we can visit offline if we need to. But as a combatant commander, can you explain the impacts to your ability to conduct operations or even execute an operation plan in your AOR without the materials and resources as discovered by the Camoland war game? And if presidential determination is granted, allowing DLA to use DPA Title III funds to help build the defense textile industrial base capacity, would that give you the flexibility needed in your operational planning?
Congressman, from a wargaming standpoint, bad news is good news because we act on it and we run to the problem. As I've discussed earlier in my testimony, World War II was won every bit as much on our ability to supply, to sustain the force as any. We frequently overlook items that we take for granted. This is why we do war games, and we embrace that data, and it's our duty to act on it.
Well, I just want to thank you all. I'm very impressed, and thank you for all you're doing for our nation. Keep up the great work. Thank you. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, now recognize the gentlelady from Maryland, Ms. Elfreth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your service, and thank you for being here today in this candid conversation. I'd like to follow up on some questions started by my colleague from Virginia, Ms. Kiggins, and Ms. Goodlander here. I'm really grateful to be on a committee that it has a bipartisan focus, particularly on shipbuilding. But equally important to shipbuilding in our economy is the workforce that we discussed, but also ship maintenance and repair. Particularly, I don't know if you can do your job if we don't have a thoughtful strategy on repair. So I'd like to focus there. Admiral, you mentioned earlier today about the defense industrial base and how we need to liberate long lead times of supply chains. And I kind of want to dig into this as we're also talking about acquisition reform here that's much needed. Can you walk us through how you are advising Big Navy to better balance the need to have a robust investment stateside in our domestic shipyards while also ensuring that our ships can be maintained in a potentially contested environment in Indo-PACOM?
Congresswoman, good morning. I think there are four drivers to shipyards not meeting rate. And it is new unpredicted work, it's having to rework systems, It is the workforce efficiency and the availability of on-hand supplies. And we have to get better and faster, more data-centric, use AI tools in order to anticipate problems and to do the data analytics to get better. Number two, we need a steady funding flow so the downstream suppliers can lead the long lead times. We need a diversification of the downstream suppliers, particularly take advantage of the promise of AI-enabled additive manufacturing. And I've gone to places in Torrance, California, where I've just seen some cutting-edge stuff. And we have to quickly certify those systems in order to move faster. So steady funding, database orientation to fixing our problems in those 4 fields, and diversifying our downrange supply chain and getting faster, getting simpler at the technical warrant holders in order to get to that.
That's very helpful. I want to talk about pre-positioning of equipment, particularly again since you are far away from most of any shipyard domestically adjacent. So it's my understanding that of late, the military has done a better job or made progress on pre-positioning of equipment in parts at bases and depots in your region, but across the world. But just yesterday, and I don't mean to catch you off guard, I would just love your genuine feedback here. The Army issued a stop work order on efforts to maintain these pre-positioned stocks, the hard-to-get supplies for various reasons here. How critical is your ability to have this pre-positioned equipment to your ability to operate during a conflict, particularly in a high-area denial environment?
Pre-positioning is what gains you leverage on the initial deployment of capability. And so the speed of getting capability there to get that head start on that, everything in the 21st century moves much, much faster. So the more relevant gear that we can get forward, the better. You're likely talking about Army Positioning Stock 3. And on that front, I work closely with the Department on the Army as well about identifying what are the really relevant air, missile, space, maritime capabilities, because the Army does play in the maritime game, that should be pre-positioned. And how are we gaining the authority to position those in places so that we can respond to that change? And so I think it's an ongoing process as we make those calculations. I prefer that it was mission reasons why we didn't versus fiscal reasons. And I work very closely with the services to advocate that the only reason that we don't position something forward is for reasons of mission and not to save a buck, because Indo-PACOM is not the place to go for your savings.
Right. And also preparedness will ultimately save us money down the road.
Save us money, lives, capability, people, and time. In that order.
Thank you. With my remaining seconds, Mr. No, I want to follow up on my colleague from Hawaii's conversation. I represent the U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis, which is going to be underwater in a matter of decades. Now, thankfully, the Navy is preparing for that, but I also would be remiss if I did not urge this administration to take seriously the rising tides that are coming, not just for the Academy, but across our installations. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield my time back.
Chair yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Benjamin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have the privilege of being the last, and I congratulate you all on sitting through this long hearing, and thank you for your service. And Fleet Master Chief, I congratulate you on your upcoming retirement. It's great to serve, but it's also great to be retired. So, China, Russia, and North Korea and Iran represent decades-long alignment of leading authoritarian states. They represent really the antithesis of American values and ideals in many ways. Recently, Iran has been weakened in its Middle East conflict with Israel, and Russia in its protracted engagement on Ukraine, so much so that they could not reinforce their bases in Syria and had to mostly withdraw. Admiral Paparo, does this axis of authoritarians demonstrate an increased threat environment inside and outside of Indo-PACOM, including to our homeland?
Congressman, unequivocally, yes.
Does helping Ukraine remain a strong, sovereign, independent country weaken Russia in this axis?
Sir, Russians' failure and/or Russia's success will have a direct correlation on deterrence in the Pacific, and Russia is a significant threat in the Indo-Pacific.
And I agree, and I think it's the best observable way to weaken Russia rather than trying to entice them with some sort of carrot approach. In fact, this weakening of this access, two members of the access, comes at no cost in American service member lives, although there have been Americans that have gone over and volunteered and tragically lost their lives in Ukraine. But it does come at a cost in material and treasure. And as a 25-year Army vet, that's what I call a good deal. So, Mr. No, unlike the United States, there's no daylight between China's commercial and military sectors. They're one and the same in many ways. You mentioned to my colleagues that you don't look at tariffs. However, because the military and commercial sectors are intertwined, then in your role, and certainly the Secretary must take the impact of tariffs into consideration. I mean, I think back on history and the U.S. oil embargo on Japan and the prelude to World War II and Russia's attack, or Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. In your assessment, does this constitute a major escalation with China and escalate military tensions?
Congressman, I will talk about what I know and what I've been working on, which is that the department has been moving quickly at the direction of our Secretary of Defense to strengthen our posture, to strengthen our alliances and partnerships with our allies and partners throughout the region, to reestablish deterrence and to deter China. So we've been doing so, and we will continue to do so.
So, I mean, has the department conducted a risk assessment of the administration's tariffs impact on the risk of additional conflict or potential conflict with China? And does the department have will the department do so?
Congressman, I'm not sure if the department has conducted such an assessment. That's something I can take back.
Okay, I encourage you to do so. If we're choking them off economically, and they've already indicated an intent to seize Taiwan, where it seems like we might be further driving them into an aggressive posture against us. So something we should look at, certainly from the department's perspective. Now, looking at the impact of tariffs on our partners, we're asking our partners to raise their spending to 5%. If we're at the same time we're looking at the risk of a global recession and a U.S. recession, what are the chances that they're going to be able to increase their spending in a recessionary environment?
Congressman, Secretary Hegseth has communicated the message not only during his visit to the Indo-Pacific in Japan and the Philippines, but when speaking with counterparts throughout the region, that they need to step up and do more.
And I understand that, but what I'm asking you to do, and you may not be prepared to answer this now, and I don't have much time left, but I encourage you to look at what the imposition of these tariffs does to the request to increase military spending. So thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Chair, and I recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Davis.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. And I believe I might get to be the last one today before you. But thank you so much for your patience and being before us today, to Admiral Paparo, to General Brunson, and to Mr. No. Any deterrence or offensive maneuvers in the Indo-Pacific region require a resilient and modernized amphibious fleet. Newport News Shipyard, a great hope of revitalizing the domestic shipbuilding industry, employs more than 1,000 residents in North Carolina's 1st Congressional District. We go right across the line, and this becomes a very important pipeline for us. And I've listened and heard your remarks, and so far when we talk about workforce, data, AI, looking for a steady funding flow, going through the certification process, and all the concepts and ideas as you reflect on where we need to be. What would you say is the greatest challenge, if there is one or two?
For manpower, sir?
Yes.
The greatest challenge is pay. It's being able to outcompete other employers that match the work, and the work is not as arduous, as tough. And so when we're competing with a job that's just not as hard on the I just say it's a shipyard work is hard trade work, and you can't compete with a services type industry on equal pay.
Yeah. I just want to follow up. How is IndoPACOM partnering with, for instance, Transcom to balance older foreign-made vessels with procuring new ships to maximize sea lift capability?
Well, first, we collaborate as a military sea lift command, the component of Transcom. We hire out console tankers to be able to hire commercial providers to be able to take up some of that capability. We hire out commercial air services to execute tanking airborne, and we do a great deal of movement via contracted air. But in the unforgiving hour, the best way that we're going to be able to get to contested areas is with gray hulls and gray tails for our ships and for our aircraft.
Yeah. Well, I want to, again, thank the witnesses for being here. And, Mr. Chair, we're going to yield back the balance of the time.
Gentleman yields. Chair, I recognize as the ranking member.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to follow up a little bit on some of the earlier comments around the tariff thing. Not trying to be excessively argumentative, but I'm curious about the answer to this question. So the premise that was given us is that basically the reason we're doing all the tariffs is we have bad relationships with all of these countries. They're using us, in essence. It is not a mutually beneficial relationship. It's one where we're given too much and they're taking too much. And that's at least a theory. But I'm just curious, General Brunson, you work with South Korea. Do you view our relationship with South Korea as mutually beneficial, or do you think they're taking advantage of us?
Congressman, I view it as mutually beneficial.
Thank you. And Admiral Paparo, it's tougher with you because you got a whole bunch of different countries to worry about. But is there a country out there that you think is taking advantage of us that we're partnering with in Australia, Philippines, Japan, Taiwan, any of these places? Or do you view our relationships with these countries right now, prior to all the current, contested stuff, is it mutually beneficial, or are we being taken advantage of?
Ranking member, from my seat with the military instrument, it is mutually beneficial.
So, and Mr. No, I know you ducked all of this because, DOD doesn't put tariffs in place, but it is a whole of government thing, as you said in your statements, in diplomacy, development, certainly trade and business is important part of it. It impacts your job. I mean, it clearly impacts. If we have an antagonistic relationship with a country in Admiral Paparo's region, I would trust that you would think about that. I mean, what you do about it is highly debatable, but it's not really your answer that tariffs and trade relationships have nothing to do with our national security interests or with the Department of Defense's mission in the Indo-Pacific, is it?
Ranking member, I will speak to what I know, which is the defense relationship that we have, the relationships we have with our allies and partners throughout the region. In that regard, we have very strong relationships, and like I indicated earlier, the engagements that I've personally had, that I've seen the Secretary have with his counterparts, all indicate that we have very strong relationships.
So you would not say that we're being taken advantage of by these countries. You would view the relationships, much as Admiral Paparo and General Brunson have said, as mutually beneficial.
I'll say two things, Ranking Member. One, they are mutually beneficial, but two, our allies and partners absolutely need to do more. And that means spend more. That means buy more of the right capabilities to strengthen our deterrence posture. So there's absolutely more that they can and ought to be doing.
Do we need to do more?
We all need to do more, Ranking Member.
So it is a mutually beneficial relationship. And the last thing, and I know you are in an acting position, I confess I didn't look to see if somebody has been picked yet for your position. So I know you're not going to be there in a little while. But for everyone listening, for everyone involved, it's just not an acceptable answer for the Department of Defense to say, well, that's not us, we're not paying any attention to it. And I'm not going to pin you down whether or not you support it or not. But it definitely is connected to our mission in the region to have all of this interrelated. And it really frightens me to think that you're like, well, the State Department's doing their thing, the trade folks are doing their thing, and we're over here and we really don't pay any attention to them. That's not the right approach. It definitely needs to be more interrelated with that. And I thank the chairman for his indulgence, and I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Chair, and I recognize the gentlelady from South Carolina, Ms. Mace.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank our witnesses for being here today. The Indo-Pacific region is a dynamic region strategically critical to the United States, as you all know, and our national security. China's rapid military expansion, significant advancements in technology and cyber warfare, and its aggressive pursuit of economic and political influence represent its very aggressive and calculated effort to reshape the region and to displace the United States. We now recognize that a formidable adversary is systematically working to undermine our influence and reshape the region. President Trump is committed to ensuring peace through strength, and Congress must act to ensure the department is resourced to meet the challenges we face. Through increased capabilities, robust partnerships will create a network of deterrence that can effectively counterbalance the CCP's malignant goals. And dare I say, we have a president who's the strongest president we've seen in my lifetime, who can stand up to Xi Jinping, stand up to communist China and the threats that they are pursuing against the United States and our allies. The challenges we face in the Indo-Pacific region are not fleeting. We've got to respond with a comprehensive whole-of-government approach. Our strategy must be defined by preparedness, innovation, capability, and also swiftness, decisive action, being nimble, being fast, which is something we need to work on these days, as you all know. The PLA has made significant progress towards fielding a joint force that's capable of challenging the U.S. in every domain. So my first question is to Admiral Paparo today. There have been many reports on the staggering pace of the PLA's Navy shipbuilding activities. How does the U.S. shipbuilding measure up?
Congresswoman, the PLA is building surface combatants at the rate of 6 per year. The United States are building surface combatants at the rate of 1.6 per year. PLA is building 2 submarines per year. The United States is producing 1.28 presently. Attack submarines per year. We're working on Columbia-class SSB.
How does the quality of the Chinese manufacturing of their naval ships and submarines compare to the U.S.?
I think from a capability standpoint, just numerically, they're not as capable on range. The SM-2, SM-3, SM-6 dominates their capability. The Tomahawk land attack missile dominates their capability. Our sonars are better. Spy-6 radar is going to be a better radar. Our ships are more capable from a tonnage standpoint. They're more capable from a weapon standpoint and in the electromagnetic spectrum.
And then in the event of a conflict, do we have sufficient naval yard capacity to repair and refit our vessels?
I assess we do not, Congresswoman.
And what do we need? I mean, how quickly do we need to move on that?
We need to fire up more shipyards, and we need to fire up more ship-making capability unequivocally.
How would you rate the PLA's ability to conduct joint operations between the air and naval forces with the first island chain?
Inferior to the United States in every way, working to get better every single day, and I see the palpable progress.
And how does that affect their anti-access area denial strategy?
They get better at it, and it requires me to counter it, us to counter it more effectively. But they're getting better at it, they're proliferating more, and they're getting more and more joint in their exercises and more farther afield.
And we've all seen them. They engage in destabilizing behavior in the South China Sea as they seek to advance expansive territorial claims. It's increasingly resorted to non-militarized tactics to bully their neighbors. Mr. No, how is the department working with partners to increase their capability to withstand the CCP's coercive actions in the South China Sea?
Congresswoman, we're doing a great deal in the South China Sea to work with our allies and partners to to strengthen our posture, to enhance their capabilities. I think one good example is the Philippines. We're conducting monthly bilateral operations with the Philippines. We provide them ISR support.
When did we increase the joint operations? How long has that been going on? Or the increased frequency with them?
The exact timeline, Congresswoman, I will have to get back to you on that.
Yes, sir.
Congresswoman, we've greatly expanded the Bala-Katan series, the Salak-Nib series, the Archipelagic Defense Continuum series, and we're working towards heel-to-toe exercises with the Philippines at greater numbers and with greater joint and combined capability, and bringing in more partners, Japan, Australia, among others.
It seems to have being more effective, particularly the last 2 years, I would argue. But thank you so much, gentlemen, for being here today. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. This concludes the open portion of this hearing. We will reconvene in room 2212 at 1:15. This hearing is adjourned.